Okay, at this point I would like to call to order our regular board meeting and begin by acknowledging that the Langley School District resides on the traditional territories of the Kwantlen-Keetsi-Matsqui First Nations, and also read that as per policy 1204, bylaws of the board, this regular meeting of the Board of Education will be recorded and may be streamed live, archived, and accessed online. The board also reserves the right to edit or by motion of the board at any meeting choose to not stream. And so now I'd like to start with introductions. On my far right is Trustee David Todd. Next to him, Trustee Allison McVeigh. Our Vice Chair, Megan Dykeman. Superintendent of Schools, Gord Stewart. I'm Rob McFarland, Chair of the Board, and to my far left is Trustee Shelley Coburn. Next to her, Trustee Rod Ross, Trustee Rosemary Wallace, and our Secretary Treasurer Brian Isley. From our district leadership team, we have Assistant Superintendent, and I better go in the order on my paper or I'll miss somebody. Assistant Secretary Treasurer Shin Chan, Assistant Superintendent Woody Bradford, Assistant Superintendent Mal Gill, our Assistant Superintendent Barry Bunyan, our Executive Assistant Laurie Mason, and Ken Hoff, our Communications Manager. From our partner groups, Charla Major from QP 1260, Marnie Wilson, also from QP 1260, Wendy Cook from the LTA, Suzanne Perot from DPAC, and Kelvin Leung from the Langley Principals and Vice Principals Association, as well as Adam Henry, who is going to be replacing Suzanne on DPAC. And speaking of replacing, this is the final meeting for Suzanne Perot as DPAC, Kelvin Leung for Principals and Vice Principals. He's not with us, but Gerp from the LTA, as well as Marnie Wilson. And so we want to thank you all for your work on behalf of the students, the district, and your members. And we'll miss seeing you around, but hopefully you'll come to the exciting meetings as spectators.
There you go.
And with that, so I do have a brief announcement on behalf of the board, and that is that we're pleased to announce the addition of 8 classroom spaces to the Willoughby area secondary school currently under construction, and this is to meet the rapid growth in the region. The Ministry of Education have agreed to jointly fund the 8 classroom addition, which will bring the student capacity of the new high school from 1,500 to 1,700 students. With each party, the district and the Ministry of Education, providing half for the addition. Once the new Willoughby area school is completed, it will become RE Mountain Secondary when it opens in September 2019. So that's very good news that we were able to reach agreement with the ministry, because with the changes in the school district, contract language, growth, it was important to get that addition early, and when it's much more financially viable to do this during the construction rather than adding it on afterwards. And now, before we get to the regular part of our meeting, Trustee McVeigh has a comment.
Thank you. I would just like to take a moment to thank trustees for giving me an opportunity to make my comments earlier in the agenda. For the past 19 years, when it's come to difficult choices and decisions to be made, whether early on in my term it was ending crossing guards or changing bus routes, reconfigurations, changing boundaries, or closing schools, I have always wrestled these decisions with what my heart wants to do and with what my head is telling me to do. My heart speaks to the emotion of an issue, the care and concern and impact for those individuals involved. My head speaks to the big picture, the impact to all the students in the district, to the district itself, and to the community at large. As I have contemplated to do what to do as the next election draws closer, the wrestle between my head and my heart has been going on for quite some time. My heart loves this work. Langley is an incredible, diversified public education system, a place for all students to learn and grow. Langley is a leader in so many aspects of education and is seen in the province as an example of how all students and staff should be welcomed, supported, and valued for who they are and for what they are. My heart is dedicated to ensuring that Langley continues to be a lighthouse district and that those governing this district are doing the work with integrity and with the interest of all students in mind. My head is telling me it's time. Time to let others sit in this chair. Time to have others who are equally passionate and dedicated to public education have this voice. And time to welcome fresh ideas and new perspectives from our community. So what to do? Listen to my heart or listen to my head? And for the past 19 years, I've chosen to go with what my head tells me to do because I truly believe that that is what is in the best interest for all students, to the district, and to the community. And that ideal has served me well. So I am therefore announcing tonight that I will not be seeking re-election on October 20th, 2018. It has been a tremendous honor and a privilege to have served all these years, and I will always be humbled and never forget the trust that the residents of this community have placed in me. As this seat becomes open for someone who is equally passionate and dedicated to public education and has some fresh ideas and new perspectives to bring to this table, there is something that I need to remind you of. This work is for every student, for every family, and for every member of this Langley School District. This is not work about single agenda items. This work is not about changing the curriculum to suit your own ideals. There is no room at this table for someone who is only interested in getting what they want, because without the support of your trustee colleagues, you will be a lone voice. This table is about relationships, collaboration, trust, dedication, and the commitment to your fiduciary duty to do what is in the best interest of all students and all the families that you serve. This work is about the big picture. You must care for all that you serve, and you must listen and respect the voices of your fellow trustees and the incredible staff who support our work. This is truly wonderful and rewarding work. I encourage you to think carefully, listen to your head and your heart, and it is my hope that come October 21st, 2018, there will be a new valued member of the Langley Board of Education sitting in my chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. And now we get to the consent agenda. Could we get a motion that the Board of Education adopt the consent agenda items as presented? Moved by Trustee Dykeman, seconded by Trustee Todd. Any comments, issues on the consent agenda? Although, seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And now the report from in camera. Trustee Dykeman.
In camera, we discuss personnel and property.
Thank you. And now we come to consideration of the agenda. Could we get a motion that the agenda be approved as presented? Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded Trustee Ross. Any comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and that brings us to delegations. And attached to the agenda are two written delegations on SOGI and SOGI 123 from Carrie Simpson and one from Teresa Cardiff. And the Langley Possibilities and the Toad Program. Zozia, are you here? Okay, great. Please come forward. I can get your message. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is my first time actually coming to a board meeting, and I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far. I feel that I should probably explain our title, because before imaginations run rampantly, the TOAD program stands for Try on a Disability. And so we have been working with this for several years. Thank you, Colleen. Now I'm the right. Thank you. And so we launched it in November of 2017. Who are we? Our society was formed in 2010, and we help the residents of Langley with people with disabilities with equipment and education to them as well as the general public. So how do we help people? Well, obviously we collect used equipment and restore it, and we then provide that equipment to our clients. There's so many people who fall through the cracks. I mean, how many of you realize that if at age 65, you've now retired, you suddenly develop a disability, there is no one out there that will help fund equipment for you. So unless you're independently wealthy, it becomes very difficult. And we also act as a resource, and we create awareness and education with people with disabilities, and we encourage our clients and members to participate as well. And I just put on the slide the relationships that we have within the community, and I'm now hoping that we will have a relationship with the Langley School Board to add to this list. So this is our TOAD logo. And what we do is we create a disability in an able-bodied person so they can experience what it might be like. A couple of years ago, we had a TOAD challenge in which we chose various different political figures in Langley and made them spend 4 hours in a wheelchair, with somebody going around, with actually students from Kwantlen going around filming them to make sure they didn't cheat. So, but just to learn what it might be like. So the purpose of our TOAD program is to promote understanding and inclusion in the community. Sorry. And I'm just going to read these comments from Chris Weger, principal of James Hill Elementary School, who very kindly invited us to our first presentation to the schools. And he says Zasha and her team came to our school with their Try on a Disability program, and it was a big success. Zasha was wonderful to plan, and the organizers were patient, kind, and supportive of our students as they went through the learning stations. Our students not only enjoyed the day with them, but more importantly, developed more empathy and better understanding about life with a physical disability. We look forward to having Langley Possibilities back at our school in the near future. So we were very pleased to get that. It was so much fun. Now the next slide is something really exciting that has happened, because we ended up doing a TOAD presentation for Save on Food and their staff. And they wanted to know how they could help us to be able to provide our program. So I mentioned what we were doing in the schools, and basically what they offered was the money to pay for 6 schools to have the TOAD program. So we have the partnership now with Save on Foods. And so they've donated the money to provide this program. And so to date, we've done 2 presentations to schools. One was James Hill, which they very kindly paid us. Then there was Douglas Park Elementary, which was one of the schools that Save on Foods provided the money for. Noel Booth have already booked us for next year for Diversity Week, so we're looking forward to that. And today, this morning, and it's not in my slides, is a letter I got from Diana Wilk, or an email that I got from Diana Wilk about a principal of Douglas Park. And she says, "Hi, Zasha. Sorry for the late response to your request for feedback from your day at our school. Overall, the teachers and students were very engaged and learned a lot. The older students said," and I'm quoting several different students, "This day changed how I think about people with disabilities." Another student, "Before I saw someone who was different, I wondered what was wrong with them or what had happened to them. Now I know they're just people." And another comment, "When I see someone who needs help, I will just help them." Another one, "I decided that I want to work with kids who need help when I grow up." And the last comment, "I learned that fair isn't about everyone getting the same thing. I used to think it wasn't fair when some kids at my school got an extra break or got to use a computer. Now I know they're just getting what they need, and I get other things that I need. Thanks for providing this opportunity to our staff and students. Diana." And I mean, to me, that's why we do this. Comments like that we can make a difference. So the last thing I want to say is, why are we here? We would like to request your endorsement of this program. We would like to have 5 other schools identified to make best use of the money. The cost is $500 for school, and we have usually at least 6 volunteers coming out or more, depending on the size of the school and what's happening there. And we're there for the entire day. And we bring all the equipment with us. And what I was thinking, and this is just, I'm throwing it out, that if some other funds could be found, then maybe we could divide it and have, let's say 250 from one source, 250 from Save on Foods, and therefore we could do 12 schools. I mean, our goal is to be able to do all the schools in Langley. And that's all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you for the delegation, and those are great words. The quotes from the kids are always the best. They tend to be so insightful about different issues, and I know that I think that I can speak for all the board that the comments really resonate, both with specifically what you're talking about, but also generally of people differ and how we need to different strengths, different weaknesses, all sorts of things, and how important it is to they're just people, as you said, and that's lovely. Thank you for being specific about your ask. On behalf of the board, I will get back to you on your ask, and because we've got to work through a process and all that sort of thing. But you will hear back.
If the answer is, of course, let's go ahead with this, I would love to be assigned a superintendent to direct us, so that I've got somebody to work with.
Okay. Thank you very much. That is great, and I will be in touch. And now over to our Secretary Treasurer for the annual budget bylaw for 2018-19, Mr. Isley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the May 29th meeting, we had our first 2 readings of the budget bylaw that were passed by the board. Since that time, we've had an open house with the community and had 15 members attend for that to ask a few questions and to get some clarity. But tonight we're going to go through for the 3rd and final reading. Before we do that, I thought I'd just do a quick highlight of some of the items that were in the budget, just to refresh people's memory of what was in there. The slide up there is the annual bylaw amount, which is bylaw for just over $240 million, split between the three funds, the operating, special purpose, and the capital funds. The bulk of those funds being our operating funds, which are now at just over $203 million. If you recall, that revenue is those expenditures are slightly more than the revenue that we are getting from the ministry and collecting from other sources, which would leave the district with a planned deficit for the year of $2.377 million that we would be taking funds from prior year accumulated surpluses to balance those budgets, which is shown in the next slide. You can see that at the end of June, we have a projected accumulated surplus in items that are restricted of just under $8.6 million and an unrestricted surplus of just under $5 million for a total surplus of just under 13.6. So we would take $500,000 from internally restricted for infrastructure replacement, which is some work that we are planning to do at DW Poppy as we convert that to a middle school program. $450,000 from the technology restricted amount that we had on the books, and that's for our 2-year plan of some teachers and some IT staff and a district person to put forward with some of the projects that we have identified in our technology plan, and then $250,000 for some initiatives to support schools. That would leave us with just under $1.2 million that we would take from our unrestricted surplus to get us to our $2.4 million. So the motions that are before you I've put up on the screen here. So we would need the board to first appropriate that $1,177,257 of the unrestricted, and then for the board to unrestrict previously restricted amounts to be used to balance the funds of the $500,000, the $450,000, the $250,000 that we just spoke of. And once that is done, then we would go for the third reading of the bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Isley. We'll begin with the motions, and then if anybody has any questions or comments as we go along. So the first recommendation is that the Board of Education direct staff to appropriate $1,177,257 of unrestricted surplus to balance the operating fund for 2018-19. Moved by Trustee Todd, seconded Trustee Dykeman. Any comments, questions on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Now we have a recommendation that the Board of Education approve staff to appropriate or unrestrict the following restricted surplus amounts to balance the operating budget for 2018-19. $500,000 internally restricted for infrastructure replacements, $450,000 district initiatives to support school technology, and $250,000 district initiatives to support schools. Moved by Trustee Ross, seconded by Trustee McVeigh. Any comments or questions on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And now could we have a motion that the school district number 35 Langley 2018-19 annual budget bylaw in the amount of $240,670,754 be given third reading, passed and adopted on this 19th day of June 2018. Moved by Trustee Dykeman, seconded Trustee Todd. Any comments or questions on this item? Trustee Todd.
Thank you. Thank you again for all your work on this budget. I know it's kind of, you do yeoman's duty developing it. And I don't want to steal Trustee Ross's what keeps you up at night. But I did want to say that in our formal report you talk about the special purpose fund changes, and that may be potential for dark clouds. Maybe do you want to explain publicly what is contained in our documents?
So the restored language for the teachers brought a new fund this school year that we're currently in the classroom enhancement fund, which we're still working on what funding we will be receiving for the 18-19 school year. When we wrote the report, we'd only received a percentage of the previous year's allocation. We've now received a letter last night, which staff and I have not had a chance to go through in detail, unfortunately, on a little more information on what that funding is and what our overhead funding is. At the time of the writing of the report, we had asked for just under $900,000 for overhead costs for implementing that contract, which is in line with what we had asked for last year. I do know the letter that has come back is about $200,000 less than that, so we will have to look at and get more detail from the ministry as to what they did and did not cover, because I know the letter didn't specify that, so we will have to report back to the board in more detail in the fall once we have greater understanding. But there is probably some cost pressure items in that overhead amount, around $200,000 we will have to address once we get some clarity from the ministry.
Trustee Ross.
Thank you, and appreciate your work and the work of your team. The comment I have is the international students, how much money does the school district generate for our budget that comes specifically from international funds?
How much revenue you mean?
Yes, how much revenue.
Do you have the exact number, Mr. Chand? It's 14 million.
For 2018-19, 14.2.
14.2, yeah. So I guess my secondary question, the comment I'd like to make out of this, it's very impressive. We've got basically a $250 million budget, and yet 14 million of it we generate from our own revenue making activities here in the school district, which is very impressive. The second thing I want to make a note of is we talked about little dark clouds. What are the dark clouds in the future that we should make our public and our partners be aware of that might be coming down the road? So the things that keep you awake at night. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Trustee Ross. Your question on what keeps me awake at night sometimes keeps me awake at night. But I'll answer it similar to last time. The uncertainty with the funding for the classroom enhancement funding that we receive is probably the biggest concern that I have. You mentioned the international student program. We were very conservative on our numbers for that. It's a lower number than what we've actually achieved this school year. Some of that is due to capacity issues, but we're pretty much at that number already. So I feel good for next year for the ISP number. But the uncertainty that we continually have with the funding on the restored language is what bothers me the most.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to comment that it's good to see the accumulated surplus, being planned to be used in an appropriate and measured way, and that it's connected to sort of the multi-year plans and of how to use it wisely. And it's important that as we have our long list of capital asks, that that money remain available for the district to do the initiatives that the province doesn't fund. And it looks like the work on DW Poppy towards the middle school vision, at least at this point, we haven't got money from the province. And so starting off with $500,000 of our own money to start moving that direction is an important step. Hopefully we'll achieve getting more support from the province on some of those capital items, which will help greatly. But it's fortunate that we have been careful to be in a strong financial position so we can make these things happen and not get in a crisis mode when surprises come along. So I appreciate the effort that's gone to it and the deliberation and the sort of careful, measured steps of how we're going to do this so that it's sustainable in the long run. Trustee McVeigh.
Thank you. When I look at the number in the budget, $240 million, it's a whopping amount of money. And when I think back, forgive me for being somewhat nostalgic, but when I think back 20 years, Trustee Ross helped me, like, this is $100 million more than what we first started dealing with it. It's a enormous responsibility. I have tremendous appreciation and respect for the finance staff who work through this, who make sense of this for us. And to be in a position where we are now, where we have surpluses to work with, I think is credit to the staff and to the board for being prudent in how it manages its, to use your word, how we are spending this money. But I think it is important that we work slowly through these surpluses. But my caution to staff is always, once these surpluses are gone, they're gone. And so let's make sure that we are doing things that are important, that meet the needs of our students, and don't set us up to be in a position where we'll have to take steps backwards in order to meet our obligations. So I appreciate the deliberations that go on at this table around how to manage this whopping amount of money. And I, again, appreciate the work that's gone into it and feel good about this budget because it does lots of really good things in our district. There's lots of enhancements. There's lots of people supporting the new curriculum and the good work that's going on in the district. So lots to celebrate here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We got Trustee Ross to speak again. Did I miss anybody? Nope. Trustee Ross?
Yeah, thank you. Second question, it goes back to your opening statements about the shelf space at the new secondary school. You said that the ministry has gifted us some extra money. Now, are they paying for the whole, is it 8 rooms, 8 or 10 rooms that we built there, or are we having to pay for half and they're paying for half? Could you just clarify for all the people in the audience?
The ministry is paying for half and the school district is funding the other half.
So our commitment is how much? How much is our commitment?
Mr. Isley, you have the number?
Just over 1.8 million.
1.8 million we put into it. Perfect. Okay, so that just goes to show you that having money gives us the ability to do some pretty creative things, which we wouldn't necessarily be able to do if we didn't have it. So.
Okay. Trustee Dyckman.
Just quickly, I agree. The ability to make things like this come to fruition is fantastic. But I'm very concerned about the trend towards school districts having to come up with funds to fund capital projects. I mean, if we don't have any more funds because we have spent them on contributing to the schools, are we just going to cease to build schools any longer? I mean, we're not a grocery chain. We're not part of the public. We're part of the public spaces. We're not a private company. And so, although I'm very excited about the fact that we've been able to put forward significant contributions to major capital projects, I don't want to appear to be an advocate of that direction. I mean, we are public education, open to everybody, free at the point of delivery, funded by the province through a co-governance model and collected from local taxes. But we shouldn't have to stockpile and sell assets and hold sales in order to fund the next school. And so, although I'm ecstatic to hear that we have an extension to the school, I don't want to send the indication that I'm supportive of the fact that we had to use money that was essentially put away and could have been put out to deliver other things into building an extension on the school. And I wouldn't want to send the message that should be the norm, because quite frankly, as taxpayers, we should be sort of saying, hey, this shouldn't be the norm. So that's my piece. But other than that, it's a great news story.
Thank you, Trustee Dyckman. Seeing no further speakers, so we have the motion for third reading on the budget moved and seconded. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That brings us to the 5-year capital plan, Mr. Isley.
While the presentation's being pulled up, just a little bit of an overview on the process for the 5-year capital plan. It's a plan that we're required to submit annually in June. That is what the ministry uses to build their project plan and their funding plan for the preceding year for them, but for also an indicative plan for going out a few years. So the plan that we submit here in the school year 17-18 relates to the funding that they'll be pushing out starting in the 19-20 year. The ministry year starts differently than our school year. Their ministry year starts April 1st, and runs to March 31st. So the funding would be effective April 1st, 2019. The capital plan now includes every portion of the capital items that we can submit, and there's a list that'll be coming in this presentation. Our plan must be in line with a long-term facility plan. Every district is supposed to have at least a 10-year facilities plan. The Board of Education provided an update to that plan that was approved in December this year. So we look at that every 4 or 5 years to keep that an ongoing 10-year horizon. The board is required to have a resolution of the plan and must submit it to the ministry by June 30th. So these are the items that are now encompassed in the annual plan. There's funds that what the ministry call annual programs. So there's things like school enhancement projects. Those are smaller projects like gym floor replacements or window replacements. We can submit those. Carbon neutral programs, there's funds to do programs that will reduce our carbon footprint, bus acquisitions, and playground equipment, which is the new one that was added just this school year. And then they talk more about the major capital programs. Those are the ones that are a longer planning horizon. Those are your seismics, your school and expansion programs, school replacements, and then some building envelope programs. Most of the smaller, shorter ones basically go through a one-step approval process with the ministry. So basically, they send out the capital plan instructions. The boards do a submission of the 5-year capital plan and fill out intake sheets that have some details on these projects. And then it's basically the ministry either approves or rejects that project, and then basically in our funding letter they indicate that, and we just start that program. For the larger ones, it's a 2-step process, very similar to the first one, but there's 2 different levels of approval that the ministry undertakes with those, whereas they approve kind of the concept of the program, and then districts are asked to do a project development, and that varies by the type of project that there is. At that point, there's another decision point for the ministry as to whether or not they will proceed and give districts approval to proceed with that project. So this would be similar to where we are with the Southwest Yorkson site. We are at the stage 1 approval, where they've approved us to develop the project definition report for that future elementary school site. Every year, we also receive a written response to our 5-year capital plan called the Capital Plan Response Letter. And it basically advises districts of the next steps with what was been submitted. And it only details the items that they've either approved or want us to advance to the second stage of the approval process. For land acquisitions, they could be telling us to go ahead with that acquiring of the site. For the smaller projects, they could tell us the findings there and to start proceeding with that. They can also ask us to start working with BC Housing for the building envelope projects. For the tendering for the school enhancement projects, they'll tell us to proceed with that. And then they'll also give us approval on the buses, which we have a ministry program that we then use to procure those. Once that letter has been arrived, the board will have to do a single bylaw for that so that we can draw down those funds. As mentioned tonight, there's a current project contribution policy from the ministry where all major projects, those are the larger ones, require a contribution from the school district to proceed with those projects. For school addition, newest schools, school replacements, and even seismic mitigation projects. If the lowest cost option wasn't chosen, then they are expecting districts to make a contribution to that. The amount of that contribution is to be assessed by the government on a case-by-case basis, depending on the current financial capabilities of the district at that time. The major program requests for the expansions and replacements and projects like that are for year 1, 2, and 3 are expected to be projects that the district has a fairly good understanding of the timeline and scope and the cost of those projects. The year 1 projects absolutely should be very reliable in that timeline, and it's expected that those are ones that can be triggered by the district fairly quickly. The projects in year 4 and 5 are more of a nominal idea of what is out there when it comes to timeline and to scope and cost. But the ones in the earlier plans, especially in year 1, are expected to be pretty hard and fast. And then even in the ones in year 2 should be pretty accurate, because they could be pulled forward into year 1 if the ministry has the funding to do so. For each of the projects, we need to provide a project request fact sheet. It's an information sheet that provides the ministry enough information to deem whether or not they want to support that project. It basically outlines the impacts of those needs on the operational and the capital solutions to it, forecasts for the enrollments and the capacity needs for that facility, and also looking at facility condition index, if that is a factor in going through with that. And basically from this, they should be able to outline the risks and the concerns and the opportunities for that capital investment. On the screen, I apologize for the small numbers and large words. This is the 5-year plan that we are bringing towards the board tonight for hopeful approval to be submitted in the next couple of weeks. Staff is still working on filling in all the paperwork for these projects, but this is how it works. The first 9 are in priority ranking. The ministry does ask that we rank the priorities of these projects. Our first and number 1 priority is the building of the elementary site on the Southwest Yorkson site that we acquired earlier this year. And the second priority we have is acquiring a piece of property up on the Willoughby Slope for the potential next middle secondary site. And the reason that we have that one as the number 2 priority is the concern that we have of finding a site large enough as Willoughby starts to be bought up rather quickly. Unlike elementary sites, there is no requirement for developers to set aside land for middle and secondary sites. So this is, we would be buying this land out on the open market. So that also limits our options when it comes to purchasing a site. Unlike when we look at buying an elementary site and developers have to put land aside for a park site and a school site. Third priority is another piece of land, is the build out of the Northeast Latimer site. That one, you don't see the land on here as one of the priorities. That is one from a previous capital approval letter that the ministry has an envelope still waiting for us to acquire a piece of land that we are currently working on in that area. So this would be the build out of a second elementary site up in that area. And then the expansion of Langley Secondary. Now that we have the restored language, that school is no longer right-sized, and we are looking at capacity issues for that facility. We've mentioned the middle school conversion, so that's our 5th priority is some funds to help that conversion at DW Poppy. And the 6th priority is a combination of the land and building of a middle school in the Walnut Grove area for the conversion of middle school there as well. Followed by an expansion of West Langley, which was more of a placeholder than a definitive decision for the 2nd middle school up on the Walnut Grove. The 8th priority is another property in Southwest Latimer, and we've put out on the horizon for the ministry to have some visibility is a potential property in year 5 of the plan for the Brookswood Fernridge area. We also have some Seismic projects, the first 3 on there are ones that we've received initial approval. So we've gotten stage 1 approval for those projects and have gone to the project definition section for both of those sites. The one at RE Mountain obviously wouldn't be done until the new high school is open. And then we've requested 2 more seismic projects of DWP Poppy and Brookswood Secondary. Then we have some school enhancement projects to do window replacements at Brookswood and Poppy. And we found out just a few weeks ago that we are most likely heading towards a building envelope project at Aldergrove Secondary. And then we've listed the next 3 priorities based on age and need for playground units of Nickel-Mackle, Glenwood, and Topham. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Isley. Trustee Ross.
Thank you again. My question has to do with the playground enhancement program. I just want to manage expectations because it sounds like the ministry is going to pay for playgrounds, but that's not the case. So could you give us some more background, some context for the playgrounds, please?
Yeah, the playground is a new fund that the ministry has established this school year. It's an ongoing fund that they've committed to. There's 2 levels of playgrounds, a $90,000 and then a more extensive one for $120,000. It is a limited fund. There were 21 districts that received no playgrounds in the first go-around of funding. The ministry has committed to those districts that they are the priority for the next funding cycle. So not every district will be receiving a playground every year. There's not enough in that fund to accomplish that. So whether or not we will be lucky enough to receive another playground in the next go-around is to be determined. But if the fund continued, I would imagine that every second year would be a safe assumption, as long as there's a need for schools to have upgraded playgrounds.
Trustee Coburn.
So my question, I see Nickel-Mackle on the screen there for playground enhancement, and my question is about Nickel-Mackle and that neighborhood of schools. Given the growth, and I've asked this question a lot, I'm going to keep asking it. Given the growth in the city, specifically in the Bryden Lagoon, Nickel-Mackle area, with that school almost already at capacity, if not at capacity, with no developable land in the city, and again, the rapid growth there, what could be done there, or what is the plan around that, and how would we manage that if it's not on our 5-year plan?
We've had conversations with the city, and they are in the process of doing a development plan for the city, which they hope to have in the fall. And from that information, we will then have to build projections on what that means for the schools in the city. There are possible portable additions until the short term, building additions onto those schools, catchment changes, all those will have to be evaluated once we have the information from the city, because right now they haven't given us a definitive plan and they're developing that right now.
And sorry, and I appreciate that answer. And just in line with what Trustee Dykeman is suggesting, so I would have concerns that that money would come out of our own money when they're not funding, when we've been funding capital projects. I'm curious where we would expect that money to come from.
It would, as per the policy, it would be a discussion with the ministry, and once they've approved the project, as to what our potential contribution would be for any addition or future schools.
Trustee McVeigh.
Thank you. So following along this notion of funding for capital projects, looking at our number 1 request, which is a new school site and a budgeted amount of $28 million. Do you have any inkling of what the expectation for the board may be as far as what its contribution towards that school could potentially be down the road? And then I have a follow-up to that.
We don't. I imagine it wouldn't be less than 20%, which would be about $6 million. It could be more than that, depending on what they request.
So the concern, which you've heard a little bit tonight, is definitely a troubling one, in the sense that while the ministry is saying that they will look at these things on a case-by-case basis, at some point we will not have surplus. At some point we will not have assets to sell, and then so does that then hamper our ability to get what we need for students in this community in areas that are growing, because I don't see that Langley is going to be shrinking in size or student population. As Trustee Coburn alluded to, the city is growing. The new work or the new plans for development in Brookswood are going to have an impact on schools out there as well. So this is a troubling direction that we're being steered in, and while great fiscal management is going on here, at some point the pot's going to run dry, and then what? So it's a caution, and it's something that we need to be mindful of.
You, Trustee Todd.
Thank you. I guess preface it by saying I think it's an optimistic 5-year capital plan. I did quick number crunching, and it's $225 to $230 million over the next 5 years. Hopefully, construction within the Langley area. So, very hopeful. I'm concerned if we're expected to fund any of them, never mind 20% or 30%, because the dollars we give there are dollars not spent in a classroom. Cost estimates. I have 2 questions. Cost estimates. When we're building a project, what are the current inflationary costs? Like, what do we build in? Like, I know it certainly the Willoughby new high school. What's built in?
So there's when the costing's done by a company that does that, that's recognized by the ministry. They do it on industry standards. They do an escalation factor for the time between the costing and the tendering of the business. So they do recognize that as an amount that they put below the line that districts can request to be moved into the project funding, which we have done for the LSS project and the high school up on the Willoughby slope. They are looking at increasing the rates. The estimates for that elementary school we've actually gotten from the ministry based on what they're seeing in escalating costs in construction, which is a concern for the capital branch as well. I believe the last time that we built this school, it was nowhere near that amount. It was 10 million less at least when we built Bullpit. This school is slightly larger, but the cost of construction is rapidly increasing.
And my second question, I did find one gem, apprentices on public projects policy. So if I read it over correctly, it's basically some kind of, they write into a project proposal that you'll be using apprentices. Is it likely that they might be Langley grads or people that have come through the program, either at DW Poppy, or we don't write that into the project, I realize, but that's a possibility?
It's always a possibility. It's just written into the pre-tender documents as a requirement for whoever bids on the job. They could be Langley students, but they may not.
Now, the top, all of the 9 rated projects are obviously important, or they wouldn't be there, but the top 3 or 4 are particularly time sensitive, and I'd say the top one, the building out of the elementary school, which has not been approved. We've approved buying the land, but not building the school. Could you speak to the timelines we need, considering space needs and time of construction, and sort of when do we need to hear back from the ministry for these things to line up properly?
They have asked us to have our project definition report in by the end of August. Staff is doing everything they can to beat that timeline, and we've set an internal one of June. which is very ambitious to do it in 3 months instead of the 6 months it usually takes, but that's what we want to do. The reason being that we feel that if we get approval in September, there's still a chance to be able to do this project and have it open for September 2020. Very ambitious timelines, but we feel September 2020 we're going to have issues with capacity and where to put students.
Thank you, Mr. Isley. Now, trustees, could we get a motion that in accordance with provisions under section 142(4) of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District 35 Langley approve the proposed 5-year capital plan for 2019-2020 as provided on the attached 5-year capital plan? Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee McVeigh. Any other questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and that brings us to the trustee election bylaw. Mr. Isley, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, in your package is an updated bylaw as we need to do that for the election that is coming up. For the last election bylaw we have is 2014-01, and the bylaws for elections have been changed, and we need to have a new bylaw for the election coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Isley. Trustees, could we get a motion that the School District 35 Langley Trustee Election Bylaw number 2018-01 be given first reading? Moved by Trustee Dyckman, seconded Trustee Todd. Any comments, questions on that? Trustee Dyckman?
I just want to reiterate for anybody who's here who hasn't read the package, the changes are not substantial, they're compliance nature. So we will be doing 3 readings tonight. We're not changing anything about the bylaw beyond what's required by legislation and Election Act changes. So, to be fully transparent, there's nothing. The reason why there'd be 3 readings tonight is because there isn't anything being changed beyond what we have to change to comply with the current framework.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? And now, can we have a motion that School District 35 Langley Trustee Election Bylaw number 2018-01 be given second reading? Moved by Trustee Ross, seconded Trustee Coburn. Comments or questions on second reading? All those in favor? Any opposed? And now, could we get a motion that Board of Education of School District 35 Langley approves having all 3 readings of the Trustee Election Bylaw number 2018-01 at tonight's meeting? Moved by Trustee Ross, seconded by Trustee McVeigh. Comments or questions on having all 3 readings? All those in favor? Any opposed? And now, could we get a motion that School District 35 Langley Trustee Election Bylaw number 2018-01 be given 3rd reading, passed and adopted this 19th day of June 2019? Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Todd. Any comments at this stage? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that brings us to the trustee indemnity adjustment for December 1st, 2018. Mr. Isley.
So trustees will recall at the May in-camera and the May regular meeting, we talked about the requirements for the trustee indemnity for policy 1400. That requires a committee to be established from the community. So that committee had met over the preceding months and had reviewed all kinds of information that they presented to the board, and had provided some recommendations to the board that we said we would bring back to give trustees time to reflect and to consider those recommendations. I just wanted to go through those with you tonight and then answer any questions that you had. The first one was a recommendation from the committee to bring the trustees' indemnity in line with comparable districts, and they used a factor of student enrollment compared to our comparables. So their first recommendation was, as of December 1st, that the salaries would be as reflected on the screen there, $27,690 for the chair and $1,000 less for the vice chair and $1,000 for the trustee. As they were going through, they also realized that there are tax implications that are being changed due to tax rules that are kicking in January of 2019. So they went through a process of determining what that would look like for a trustee so that they would be cost neutral on this. And this is their proposal to kick in January 1st based on those tax implications, which would increase the chair's salary to $30,490 and $1,000 less for the vice chair and proceeding to the trustee as well. They also recommended that the Board of Education salaries be changed annually based on the Canadian Consumer Price Index, and that there was also recommendation to look at the policy for 1400 on a couple items. One, to reflect the impact of the federal income tax, and the second being clarity as to what the current method possibly means in that policy. So for those two recommendations, recommending, if the board so deems, to take that to the policy committee for those last two recommendations for them to discuss and then propose to the board. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Trustee Dyckman?
Thank you for bringing this back. The previous board, so the board prior to this board, felt that it was best that the Board of Education look at the trustee indemnity in the place of the new board coming in. Part of the challenges that we face as trustees is there isn't a person who sits there and says, well, you're going to receive, you know, a range in this remuneration. So you'd be newly elected, and then you'd be looking at what you're going to, you know, quote unquote, pay yourself. And that's a very awkward situation. So looking sort of into the future, it made a lot more sense that we look forward to the new board. So boards change, and nobody's guaranteed to be in a seat when they come back. So you're looking at the future board. And one of the challenges it faces, and one of the reasons why I like the CPI indexing, is you get the situation where you have a 4-year period and things have remained the same. And then all the boards are looking at their indemnity at the same time, and it sort of becomes this blinking game. And one of the things that boards are committed to is attracting people to come to the table who are there and are able to be there, and not exclude people who would only be able to do it because they were in a situation where they were able to significantly put their time in and not receive even compensation for the expenses that put out. We do not claim our expenses back from the district, so we don't get mileage within the district. We don't receive compensation for events we attend. There is none of that. It is not like a regular employment situation. So at the present time, we receive 1/3 of it to compensate for those expenses that we would otherwise be bearing on our own. That's supposed to offset that. And with the government's changes, they came forward and removed that stipend portion, which left us in a position where you would then be paying tax. You've moved to a new tax bracket, so you'd be paying way more tax, and you wouldn't be able to recover any of your costs. So I'm grateful for the committee's recommendations. They put in an extensive amount of time and an extensive amount of analysis into it. The only thing that concerns me in the report is that it says for the newly appointed board, we're not appointed. We run an election. We're elected, or we're instilled. Like we go through a process. We're sworn in. So I don't think it needs a motion to amend it, just as a housekeeping matter. I think that the word appointed should be changed so that people don't think, well, the tax law was changed and now they're appointed. Yes, Rod? Oh, sorry. He's like, yes.
So, Trustee Degman, could you be specific? Yeah. What word are you proposing
on the,
in light
on the
of appointed?
First page, right where it says newly appointed board.
To substitute elected.
Or instilled, because once we're sworn in. But I mean elected's fine.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm supportive of this, and this conversation is never pleasant. but or easy to have, because it's hard to give yourself a change in your pay. But looking forward to the board, I think, to attract people that are going to run and continue to have people put in their time. It's important to ensure that they won't be out of pocket, which most of us, even at the end of the day, right now, have significant expenses, which leave us out of pocket in many cases.
Okay. Trustee Ross?
Yeah, I'd actually like to speak against the first recommendation with respect to the having our wage indexed with the CPI. I don't think any of our other
Trustee Ross, we need to go through a few motions. Would it make more sense to insert your comments when we get to the CPI?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so trustees, I think we should get the first motion on the table and then we'll keep going. So the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the adjustment to the trustee indemnity effective December 1st, 2018 for trustees of the newly elected board as follows: trustee, $25,690; vice chair, $26,690; chair, chair, $27,690. So could we get a mover for that first? Trustee Ross, second by Trustee McFay. Okay, Trustee Todd, you were next up.
Thank you. For the public out there, this is kind of one of those difficult dilemmas, and I know it's been kicked around. It's certainly been in the media, more around councillors and that level of municipal government. It's not an easy idea, and certainly not an easy notion to think how you're kind of voting on something that may set your own pay. I know one local government has actually asked that a task force, the provincial government has looked at a task force to kind of help in settling this, because as you know, what happens, somebody sets pay, then someone else compares, they do a comparative, and then that board moves on that way. The way this was developed was based on enrollment. It looked at a number of factors, and there was a fair bit of science and data that went around how we arrived at these numbers. Again, it's an uncomfortable situation, and I think just in terms of optics, we have to be clear right from the front that we're not setting our pay, we are setting the pay of the coming board. And just there, I also like the idea of almost an independent panel or independent body actually looking into this issue. So maybe that has some merit down the road. But certainly, we've done our homework and we've taken it away directly from us. We have this panel that looks at it. It's a start. It's a move in the right direction. We have to make some policy changes. And you know, at present, I will be voting in favor of at least this recommendation.
Thank you, Trustee Todd. Any other speakers to this motion? Trustee McVeigh?
Thank you. Speaking in support of this as well, every time this issue comes up, one of the things I'm reminded of is that you don't do this job for the money. It's not about the money. There's in fact, I didn't even know you got paid for this job when I first started at it, so I had to ask somebody, do I get paid for this? So it's not about the money, and for all of us sitting here, I would say that it's not. But having said that, people do need to be compensated for the time that they put in and the work that they do, and I think it's important. Just a point of clarification. I think thinking back is this isn't something that we have ever made up the numbers ourselves. We found different formulas to do that, taking the average of the average. We had citizens panels before advising us on this. But the bottom line is we have to make this this choice on what to do, and I think. What's been presented is fair, and it's reasonable, and for that reason, and I like the fact that it's for the next board, which this isn't the first time it's been for the next board either. That isn't new. That's been happening. So I like that we're doing it, and I agree with the amounts that have been being recommended, and thank the committee for the work that they did on this.
Okay. So no further speakers. All those in favor? Oh, are you wanting to speak to this one again? Trustee Ross.
Yeah, I want to speak to all of them, actually. I really don't like the fact that we're not squirming over this. We're solving the next board's problem. And I think we should let them solve it. So, I mean, I understand the idea of having an external panel come in and make some recommendations, but we're making it easy for the next guys, right? And I think it's a healthy thing for people to squirm and say, hey, this is what we think we should get paid. So I think that's a very healthy thing. So I probably will vote against it at this point, unless I can hear some other suggestions as to why I should support it.
Okay, any other speakers to the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Oh, are you?
Sorry, I just want to point out, and I can't remember exactly, just the size of the district we are in this province. We are the sixth largest school district in the province, and I think that, you know, I'm not going to speak on Trustee Rod's comment, but I think just for the scope and magnitude of what comes through this boardroom, I think it's fair to say that the people who will be sitting here might deserve some compensation for what it is that what they're about to manage, which is a substantial amount of growth, and that's.
Any other speakers to this? Seeing none. All those in favor? Trustee Wallace, you in favor or opposed? Okay. And those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. And now, could we get a motion that the Board of Education approves the adjustment to the trustee indemnity effective January 1st, 2019, once the tax changes are in effect as follows: trustee, $28,490, vice chair, $29,490, and chair, $30,490. Could we get a mover for that recommendation? Trustee Dykeman, seconded by Trustee Todd. Speakers to that motion? Trustee McVeigh?
It's a question of clarification, please. The gentleman that presented commented on it, but I just want to be clear. So I understand that no longer is the first third of the salary tax-free to compensate for the expenses and whatnot that trustees incur. Are they now able to claim expenses or not? So if you're going out of district for mileage, if you're going out, if you're whatever other expenses trustees might claim, are they now able to do that, to claim their expenses, or is it expected that you are getting this additional $3,000 or whatever it is, and that covers your expenses?
You wouldn't be able to claim it tax-wise, but districts would have the option of you submitting receipts, but the idea was that this would be in lieu of that to keep you whole from a tax perspective where you are today.
So subsequent to that, because if all of a sudden our finance department is burdened with all kinds of expenses rolling in, I mean, that's labor intensive. So I'm hopeful that this levels it out so that trustees are not continually submitting receipts for expenses.
Okay. Trustee Dykeman?
My understanding was it was the opposite. We, the committee that reviewed this raised the amount to prevent the school district having to essentially assign somebody specifically to reimbursing our expenses. But under the proposed tax legislation, when I looked through it, my understanding was that if we were willing to keep a logbook detailing, you know, how much mileage is done for what. I mean, you'd be creating a nation of bookkeepers. You know, you can keep all of your receipts, and you would have the pleasure of explaining to CRA why this event was something you were doing with your family, and this is something you were doing in an official, and you know, where you're wearing your name tag, and did somebody photograph you, and did you take your children with you? That the idea would be that this increase would make it so that, no, as a trustee, we aren't going to be submitting our cell phone bills and so on to the district. But if you would like to take on a second line of employment, keeping your records, you could, I suppose, if you were able to get a T2200, claim things like, you know, a requirement to have a vehicle and mileage and so on. That was my understanding of that. That is something that we should probably seek clarification on, but that was my understanding at the time.
Thank you. Trustee Coburn?
No, to Trustee Dykeman, I think you're correct, and I think the purpose of the increase was so that we didn't create a second job for the school district with submitting all of our receipts. And yeah, we can technically, the Revenue Canada or the CRA side, we can do that, but I believe the increase, when it was calculated, it was better for the district had we done this instead of submitted all our receipts, because the cost outweighed the other.
Sorry, maybe I misunderstood. I was answering on behalf of the district, the impact on the district, not what trustees would do personally. Sorry, I misunderstood Trustee McVeigh's question, I guess.
Okay, so if I may, just to be clear, then trustees will not be submitting receipts to the district for reimbursement, because I won't support this if that's the case, because we don't need our finance department burdened with that. Okay, thanks.
Trustee Ross, you wanted to speak to this one? No? Okay. So any other speakers on this item? Trustee Dykeman?
And just to clarify, it would be receipts beyond what we do already submit, which was related to certain things like BCSTA and so on that is districts, but new things like our cell phone, we wouldn't be doing.
Okay. Any other speakers? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, now that brings us to the next recommendation. Could we get a motion that the Board of Education approves an annual adjustment to trustees' salary effective January 1st based on Statistic Canada Consumer Price Index, CPI. Do we have a mover for that item? Moved by Trustee Wallace, seconded Trustee Dykeman. Any comments on that item? Trustee Ross.
So this is the one that I have real problems with. Having something automatically, where just miraculously on the date, our wages are increased. We don't have that for any of our other staff. The superintendent isn't treated that way. And I just don't think it would be right for us. And again, it comes down to this, we need to be accountable for what we vote for. And if we're going to vote ourselves a 1% raise or whatever it is on January 1st, we should do that. It shouldn't be an automatic thing done quietly that no one ever sees. So I would like to see this board vote against this.
Trustee Dykeman.
Well, I understand where Trustee Ross is coming from. The challenge that we face as boards, and unlike the people who work within our district, is they actually are, many of the people who work in our district are under a framework for when there would be a predictable amount of an increase or no increase, or what index they can go up and what percentage. And when you looked at the reports, the majority of the boards do use the CPI. The problem is that if we don't do that, which really I'm comfortable with either, then we do end up in situations where it becomes a 9% raise. We end up doing that anyway at the end of the 4-year term. And then it's like, okay, well, Langley, who started from $4, has voted themselves a 63% raise because now it's, several dollars more. And it looks like this massive balloon. So like with this one, a 9% increase. It prevents that large leap to the next one, where you're then comparing yourself against another. I mean, if you look at, I believe it was Coquitlam, they're at $38,000 a year with way less students. And it becomes this blinking game. Okay, well, this district went up, so we'll go up there and we'll average that and we'll figure out, what's in the middle. This report came back and said, look, let's do it on per pupil enrollment. It's $1 whatever per student. And an index, so that you're not in 4 years turning around and figuring out what another board did, averaging it, and then looking at a stipend increase of 33%. And so, although there are staff who work in our district that don't receive a CPI, I believe that you would be looking at a more stable and logical, predictable and budgetable increase that wouldn't be this very challenging balloon thing where, the Secretary Treasurer is looking at it going, well, what's it going to be, 4 years from now and coming up, say, however much it is. I think it's a more logical and measured approach. I think it's better financial stewardship although it might have downsides, and you could sit there and argue both sides of it, I just think it would be a more predictable and responsible approach, in my opinion, but I could live with whatever the will of the board is on this one, just fine.
Trustee McVeigh.
Thank you. I'm actually going to speak against this as well, because I think that we have it in a policy that boards need to look at it, and that it can be that we can convene a panel to take a look at it. I totally agree with Trustee Ross on this one, that to just automatically roll yourself forward a raise because you can, doesn't hold us accountable, doesn't make us transparent in what we're doing, and there's always going to be inequity from one district to another because of how they past history, how they've arrived at their numbers, how they, you know, the processes that they have in place to reach their numbers every year, and I think that this is it makes you squirm in your chair, and it's not necessarily a fun thing to do, but I think it's something that trustees should have to do as part of their role. And yes, you can say rolling it forward every year is nice and tidy and predictable, but when I asked the question, what's this raise going to cost the board annually, I was told that it's, I can't remember the number, but it was minimal compared to the budget. It was doable, it was manageable. And so if every year or every couple of years the board takes a look at this, and some years, there were years that we didn't vote ourselves an increase because A, there was no money, or B, the optics of it were terrible because partner groups weren't getting any raises. So I think that we need to look at it on a regular basis, be accountable, be transparent, and for those reasons, I will not support this one.
Trustee Degman.
When I read the report and listened to the presentation, I by no stretch of the imagination heard that there wouldn't still be a conversation of the current board at the time for the following board. My understanding from the presentation was that the CPI index would take place to help adjust against cost of living, and that could change. That could be, you know, something a little bigger or a little smaller. It's an index, and then at the end of 4 years, in anticipation of the new board and then the election, this same conversation process would happen again. The only difference is that it would be less dramatic. And that was what, when I asked about that, he had answered. He had said that it would reduce the need to look at it every 4 years, but in the sense of like a larger increase. It would be, though, something that would still take place at the end of 4 years.
Trustee McVeigh.
So, sorry to be difficult, but where does it say in here that we would still look at it every year? We're saying that we're annually approving, we're approving an annual adjustment that is just automatically going to go up every year. So policy 1400 still says that the trustee indemnity be reviewed at a public meeting, but it's automatically going to roll forward. Anyway, so it's kind of at cross purposes, is it not?
No, I mean, other districts do approach it the same way. They have a CPI index to stop a dramatic jump after that, but you would still have a review. They do in Delta and other districts. So that was my understanding when I asked. I said, would we still be doing the 4-year thing? And he said, yeah, you'd still be reviewing it, but the jump wouldn't be as high, was my understanding.
So just my comments on the side of it's less uncomfortable because I won't be here. I won't benefit from any of this like you, Trustee McVeigh. I'm not going to run again. But to me, you can argue it both ways. I agree. I think it's sounder to have the CPI index. I think it's important that there is the review every 4 years anyway, as per the policy, because there's nothing saying that when the next board reviews it for the following board, they couldn't go, that's not the right answer, that's not the right formula, we want to change it, or even change it at another time if they so chose. But there is built in, not as this motion, but built into the policy at the end of each term, a review, and the board of the day will, you know, do what they feel is prudent. So, any other speakers to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Trustee Wallace, I didn't catch you. Which way did you go?
This is a hard one, that's why I'm doing that, sorry. I'll just.
Okay, we'll try that again. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, so that item fails. Brings us to the next recommendation, that the Board of Education refer to the Policy Committee to update the preamble for Policy 1400 Trustee Indemnity to reflect the change in the Federal Income Tax Act. We have a mover by Trustee Dyckman, seconded by Trustee Ross. Any speakers to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and now the next recommendation, that the Board of Education refers to the Policy Committee to clarify and update the wording of Clause 4 in Policy 1400 Trustee Indemnity, the current method, quote, the current method of calculating the trustee indemnity. Could we have a mover for that recommendation? Trustee Ross, seconded by Trustee Todd. Speakers to that motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. And that brings us to the new policy 3206, accumulated operating surplus. Mr. Isley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the May 1st regular board meeting, there was a notice of motion put out for this new policy. This policy is a result of the financial health information that came from the ministry and recommended that districts have a accumulated operating surplus policy in place. That policy has been out for a notice of motion, and we have received no feedback from the public.
Thank you. Trustees, could we get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the new policy number 3206, accumulated operating surplus policy? Moved by Trustee Wallace, second Trustee Ross. Anyone wish to speak to that motion? I'll just comment that this policy really reflects the practice over the past numerous years, just formalizing it in policy as per those recommendations. So all those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Brings us to policy 7002, admission of international students. Mr. Isley.
So this was also one that was brought to the May 1st meeting and has been out for notice of motion. This is one in relation to aligning our policy to the updates that were made to the School Act. So now our policies are in complete alignment with what the School Act states, and once again we received no feedback from the public.
Okay, so trustees, could we get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the amendments to policy 7002, admission of international students, moved by Trustee Todd, seconded by Trustee McVeigh. Any comments on this item? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that brings us to policy 7009, entry to an educational program. Mr. Isley.
This one is also a change in policy due to the School Act for the same reasons as the previous policy. It went out for notice of motion May 1st and also has come back with no feedback.
So trustees, could we get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the amendments to policy number 7009, entry to an educational program? Moved by Trustee McVeigh, seconded Trustee Ross. Comments, questions on this? Trustee Todd?
Yeah, I did have one question. I read it through several times, and I just want to be clear. If you're not a resident of BC, are you able to enroll in one of our schools?
That would result on all your standings. You would need to be have approval for some reason to be here and be deemed resident of BC. So not likely.
I guess my concern is sometimes, and I've heard rumor of this, that people right now, Alberta, they're planning to be here in September, and they're kind of stuck between. Can they register at the school?
They can register with the school, and what we've done in the past is they have to provide some sort of proof that that's the intent, that they have a place of residence and that they are in the process of moving. And we always err on the side of caution, and we usually do take them and then require them to provide the paperwork after the fact if need be.
Okay, seeing no further speakers to that item, all those in favor? Any opposed? And finally, policy 5004, vaccination records. Mr. Isley.
So the board has been working on a vaccination policy over the last several months, was initiated at the March 7th regular meeting and has gone through various iterations through the policy committee, and that policy has gone out to notice of motion May 1st, and no feedback was received by that one as well.
Okay, so do we have a motion that the Board of Education adopts the amendments to Policy 5004, vaccination records? Moved by Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Ross. Comments, questions on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that brings us to, thank you, Mr. Isley. That brings us to the superintendent's reports and the framework for enhanced student learning. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Isley, for all those reports from finance. And we still have people here, which is good to see. Over the next hour and a half or so, we will now spend some time in terms of the education side of things. And we're going to start off with the framework for enhancing student learning. So for those folks who haven't had a chance to look at this, if you go at our website, under our district, and you go to Langley Learns, this document here archives our learning in terms of initiatives that have taken place in the district over the past year. It is meant to be a public interface, so it is meant to kind of share out with parents and a language that does not serve as a barrier, and also give some great examples out there of some of the great work that's taken place over the last year. We went through this change, this is year 2. We've tried to put out something that will draw people in terms of imagery and engage people in the process, and hopefully have this mirrored at our schools in terms of when they share out their learning with the community, have a vehicle to do so. It is right now in a Prezi format. I have to be honest with you, there is some struggles with that in terms of as people work through it, in terms of being able to access quickly where they want to go to. So we are exploring whether to have that as a link in terms of to a website, and I'm working with our communications manager, Ken Hoff, on this as we go forward. What I'm not going to go to tonight, as we've showed this in the past, is if someone was to go to the website, the first thing they would encounter upon going there is an explanation of our vision and mission process, why we ended up with this particular document, and a traditional acknowledgement from our Aboriginal community also. And so both of those things are incorporated at the start, and it was done with some students from Langley Fine Arts who do a great job there too. So what I'm only going to do tonight is not share all of it. I just wanted to take a couple of samples from each of the quadrants to show public what we've been able to do this year. Much of this has been shared with our trustees through our education committee and strategic plan committee, where we've had presentations done on these things throughout the course of the year. So just to get us underway, we'll start here in this quadrant in terms of some of the things we're doing to, again, create a lifelong passion for learning with our kids. And any of you that were fortunate enough to go to the Idea Summit this year, this whole concept of the entrepreneurial mindset, I think this is great for all kids K to 12. It fits nicely with the redesign. It is something, again, where you have this authentic learning that can take place, and kids are learning numeracy and literacy, and they're not even knowing they're doing it in this particular context. And again, we'll equip kids with all kinds of skills around collaboration and creativity and critical thinking also as they go forward. So again, some of the opportunities kids would have had when they went out to this, and next year, it was actually so big this year that we're looking at actually doing it over 2 days at the Langley Event Center for next year. We've had a lot of kids that are interested in taking part. It was great also that it engaged our business community that came out and acted as judges for the course of the day. They were totally impressed with our kids. And a lot of parents, any of the parents that wanted to come out that day and see their kids doing things. It was an amazing day. And some of the things you do, it's not just about a product. We've really worked on the socialpreneurship. We really believe in altruism and giving back to community, which is really a part of this that the kids have done a magnificent job with. It's also being given a problem to solve and to do that with a group and given a certain time period to do it and see how people can respond to those types of things. So great feedback from kids going forward, and we were lucky that our business community also generously donated a number of scholarships towards kids that were in the finalists for this day. So again, just a way to showcase that. What you'd see on here is we have an opportunity to little video, and we also, I don't know if we're going to video play or not. Let's see if we can get it to actually. You working from your end, Barry? There you go. Play a little clip. So that's what you would have seen that day if you were there. We had approximately 800 to 1,000 kids 3 times throughout the day. So it's a good example of what you can do, and I'm getting some good echo here in terms of that particular event. Kids also getting the opportunity to do some public speaking, which was great. Also, that people can get very. It takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. They had that opportunity to do that. Also, I think with also this vehicle, what we're trying to show is what parents like is being able to see what learning is going on. And you can do this at any school. You can do this in classrooms. A number of our teachers do, which is great in terms of technology nowadays. And also being able to kind of go on there and get little slivers of that in terms of being able to have that available for people that can't get out to events is a good thing also. Again, we got some great press coverage out of it. A number of these kids went on to do the Power Play Young Entrepreneurs. They hosted a showcase at the Vancouver Convention Center. It had 50 elementary middle school students, and the teachers participated in that. Again, they did very well in that particular event. And this student here, grade 4, she'd made some earrings out of bottle caps, and they're amazing. And her, you okay there, Mr. Ross? There, got so excited about this idea. Somebody got his phone out. Grade 4. And she had a business plan that was absolutely amazing. Like, I can't even imagine where this girl's going to be once she gets to grade 11 or 12. I don't even know if we're going to know what to do with her beyond when she goes afterwards. But the story from her parent, which I found particularly incredible, is she disengaged from school. And Mom said, man, I don't know, this redesign stuff, I'm not sure. Well, took part in this. And Mom said, different kid. Because she found something she was absolutely crazy about. And I believe the power of the redesigned curriculum is trying to find kids with their passion and be able to showcase that while they're learning all those great skills related to it. So a great example of it, and she's just a great kid. Another thing too that we talked about within this quadrant is our outdoor education program. We started that, this is our year 1 out of Fort Langley Elementary. It's been very well received. The teachers have come out and done some presentations on it. They're absolutely amazing. The intent of that also wasn't just to have that as the only place this occurs. The intent there was if you wish to take part in that program, great, but it was also intended for teachers to be able to go to a place, see these types of things showcased so they can bring them back to the classrooms. You can do lots of outdoor ed stuff at any school, but some teachers just don't know, well, how does this look? How do I do it? How can I make sure kids are safe? What do I need for supplies? All those things. And you can do that also. So you kind of get a blend of both worlds. Highly recommend if people can get a chance to get out to see it. And I know that Barry Bunyan was involved in terms of when we were doing the investigations, I think about 2 years ago, working through in terms of some of the goals within that particular program, what they're after, And then I thought some great clips here, and this for any parent would love to see this one, because the kids out there enjoying a day out in the mud, having a great day. Can't imagine the laundry bill later on this one. They were out there in terms of romping in the mud as part of their lesson, using sticks and mud from around the beach to build a bird's nest. Kids love this stuff, and it's interesting that we worry a lot about the weather with the outdoor program, but only parents do. Kids don't. They don't seem to, if it's a little wet or whatever, they're fine with it. Trying to explore all kinds of different venues where to go with kids. We've talked a lot with the Kwantlen community too, to say how can we find a way to partner there more closely in the future. They've got a great longhouse out there. Is that a place that when kids, you know, could utilize throughout certain times of the year? And I know Assistant Superintendent Woody Bradford's had conversations there around with District Principal Mike Morgan. So this is just going to continue to go on in amazing ways. But again, the purpose at this point, parent can go on there and it captures a little bit of it, which is fantastic. Lots of fun. Other quadrant here, in terms of our flexible and connected environments, just again a couple of things I'm going to feature. I'll talk briefly on this one. The tech plan. We're fortunate. We're fortunate in a district to have some financial resources right now that we've been able to put towards technology, both for teachers and kids. And so what you'll be looking at for September, again, I have to commend our Secretary Treasurer Brian Isley and our District Principal Sam Maraka on the work that they've done here in terms of not only making sure we have the financial resources available, but to make sure that all of our teachers have a tool that they can use that will be allow them to be effective in their practice. And I know also working with the LTA on this particular one too, we've got a committee going there. And just to get feedback from teachers, and they're going to have basically a laptop or an iPad that they can utilize that can be every 3 years upgraded, which I think, you know, you just don't get that everywhere. And I think that's going to allow them not only to do their day-to-day work that they need to around in terms of assessment, but they'll also be able to do some great interactive things in terms of with kids, in terms of learning. The other piece on this is the student piece, and we're in year 2 of a program we're phasing in. As of right now, we have 10 schools K-3 that have 6 iPads in it per classroom, and by October this next year, we'll be up to 20 schools K-4, and by the following October, all elementary schools K-5 will have at least 6 of these in every class. I have to tell you, the teachers are so thankful, and the kids are too, to have something like that. And again, it's refurbished every 3 years. This used to be something we relied on DPACs to provide, and say if you needed technology, you can imagine the inequity throughout the district based on that. And really something that we did not want to do. And we tried to find a way to financially manage this so that we can make sure that that's taken away from PACs. It takes away from inequity. No matter what school you go to, you're going to be able to access this kind of technology. So a full kudos to the team on that particular one. And again, it's a chance here. People want to know more about the plan they can access here going forward. The other one in terms of student leadership, Lenny Yun, amazing. Work in terms of instructional services, does great stuff with the kids, and has really worked hard in terms of making sure these opportunities are available at all the schools in terms of opportunities for kids. Whole array of programs that she does. The only one I wanted to touch on, and it was one that kind of came out of, and I'm going to put it here, it was one that came out of Trustee McVeigh. What do we kind of do around seniors, and what are we doing there? And this is a great example of one I thought that they did a real nice job on. And you see them presenting there, a number of seniors there going through kind of a graduation exercise with our kids. And so they had, and this is one where kids went out to White Rock, and our kids, and they went out there and they approached us as seniors there and wanted to learn more about technology, and the kids taught them this program. So they were able to meet all the steps of the program. They graduated from the program and went through the whole process. I got to tell you, the seniors loved it. All of their tech skills went up. Kids really enjoyed the experience, and they culminated it off with, and they, by the way, this was one of the things at the Idea Summit. And so they went through a grad ceremony at the end, which was great. So when you talk about that socialpreneurship, everyone sometimes thinks you have to be selling something. These kids' idea was just, hey, what can we do to come up with something in terms of work with their seniors on that? And they were one of the ones awarded a scholarship there for their idea. They're going to continue it on like here and elsewhere, but what a fantastic thing. So I thought you'd enjoy that particular one going forward. And if we move up to here, in terms of knowledgeable and skilled literacy, continue to put instructional services an incredible amount working here, particularly on the balanced literacy program. They have a whole array, so if people want to know the goals, they can be able to take a look at the array of things there. This is one we're trying to make sure that we agree as a district that these are the best practices in terms of for helping with instruction there, and these are the measurements we're going to utilize to know if we're being successful. And that standardization takes some time because it can get people pretty attached to certain things, and it also takes some time in terms of making sure our staff can get around to everybody to make sure that the appropriate training is there going forward. And then again, if people wanted to see some of the things that we do, they can go on to this particular site, and it just shows you in terms of if parents are asking, well, what does this program look like, some of the resources that are out there. Same on the numeracy front. Again, Deanna Lightbody's come out here before. She's absolutely amazing. Kim Klein there also. These incredible ladies. One of the things too in terms of you hear a lot about is this new numeracy assessment, so we've taken our first run at that. We're going to be able to start communicating that in terms of how our kids are doing there. And again, I think what they're really looking at in terms of math, if a parent went on here, they'd be able to see that this department's trying to find ways to go beyond the traditional ways of learning math. How do you apply math? Kids like to apply math versus just sitting there and kind of with a piece of paper and working it through. So they've given some examples on here in terms of math and art. Another great way to do incorporate the math through. Getting outside. Kids love being outside. How can you do that in terms of things? Symmetry and beyond. There you go. A little bit in terms of probably a little bit of math and science in that particular one. And again, another example of things you can do outside. Showing, again, encouraging our teachers to do this. They also get that in terms of instructional services on their website. But if a parent wanted to know, oh, that's what we're talking about with this new math, they're not getting less. They're actually being able to apply it so they gain a greater understanding. What we need to do on both, and Sam Marac is doing that now, we'll have those going into the fall, is all of our district and provincial assessments that are done on kids in both of these areas. That information will be on there. And so parents can kind of see, well, how are our kids doing? And it'll be there for them. And our last quadrant, in inclusive and accepting culture, again, we've done a ton of work there. We never lose sight of our goal here. School communities share a commitment to maintaining safe and caring and orderly schools. Focus on prevention of problems and use school-wide efforts to build community fostering respect, inclusion, fairness, and equity. Beautiful. And we have tried our best to do that every day. We've got tons of work to still do, but I love being committed to that goal. A couple of things I thought I'd feature in this one here. This came via Lisa Dolinsky, talked about this particular production that took place at Dorothy Peacock called Cinder Awesome. I didn't get a chance to see it. I wish I did because I heard nothing but absolutely fantastic things about it. And the two boys up there were both autistic, and they played significant roles in this production. And they describe it as autism, AWE, and they're pretty excited about it. And I guess everyone that said they went there was amazing. And again, a great example in terms of inclusion, and they did a beautiful job on it. So I think a nice thing to be able to have people be able to focus in on when they come to the site. Another great example. And our last one here is a presentation recently done with our Education Committee on Children in Care. That's a provincial concern in terms of how kids are doing with respect to this. And Mike Pugh, his vice principal there at the district level, has started down this road. And the biggest part of this is being able to determine who these kids are. We can find out sooner rather than later. And you can't do this alone. You're working with numerous agencies, and you have to be well connected to be able to make sure we do that well. So he's starting, if someone didn't know, they could go on there. They could get to see in terms of, he's already got a plan in terms of what's required there. He's done a nice job in terms of looking at all the supports that are needed to help those kids be successful. And this is going to be, often these kids, you're going to need 10 or 20 and sometimes 30 different people to be able to make this happen. But with the right coordinated teamwork, these kids can be successful. And this is a district that is absolutely very committed to it. And what he's done is a nice job on the data piece here, just again letting people know how many people that are identified as children in care, how many of those happen to be Aboriginal or kids with learning support needs, and how many, again, 24 students on track to graduate with an Evergreen or diploma this year, I think is good to know, to see and be able to track that through. And again, if they want to know some of the people that are involved in that particular area, they could do so. And last but not least, this is again, I just went through quickly in terms of showcasing some of the great things out there this year, but there's all kinds of other things people would be able to access in terms of looking ahead too. It's something that we're going to continue to build on every year, and I think it acts as a nice The archive nice piece on that is that we can keep it, and you can pick what year you want to go to, so we could kind of go back, you know, 2, 3, 4 years in time and pull out and take a look and say, hey, how are we doing with respect to from that time period to now, and you'd still have it. So that is my report on the framework for enhancing student learning.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Oops. We'll see if I cut anybody off. Any questions, comments from Trustee Dickman?
Thank you for the update. As I was watching you go through the presentation, it took me back to our mission, vision, and value statements, and how this really has encompassed that so much, and how the availability of opportunity and programming and excellence it reaches everybody in the district. And I know that you and your team have worked so hard to do that. If you could sort of achieve one sort of big concept next year moving forward, or into the future in a couple of years, what would you like to see next? I don't mean a specific program, but where would you sort of like to see this go as we're going forward, moving into our strategic planning? Because there's so much and it's so amazing, but I know you've always said that your goal is to continue going in this direction and growing it. So I was just wondering, out of curiosity, what would you, in a perfect world, where would you like to go next?
Oh, I've got lots of ideas there in terms of where I'd like to go next. I mean, I'd still like to see, goal-wise, I want to see our grad rates higher. I think that's something that as a district everyone can be committed to, and I think we can still, in terms of literacy and numeracy, we can still making sure those kids have those skills to be successful. So in all those areas we have work to do.
Yeah.
Do I want to see kind of that innovative, inspirational, united learning community come to fruition? Absolutely. Continue to have work to do, and I guess what I really like about the showcase is I think sometimes we get mired down in terms of all the other things in education right now, and there's issues around funding, I get it, and there's issues around staffing, I get it. But at the end of the day, in this district, we have teachers, we have administrators, we have support staff that continue to make those things happen. Make those things happen despite all those other things, and I really don't want people to lose sight of it, because it's very easy to get down, it's very easy to become cynical, and I got to watch myself on this on a continual basis too. And I think we do need archives like that. We need to showcase, we need to put that out there, so when people kind of go, you know what, yeah, it's a bit of a tough go right now, we're making progress towards that goal, and our people continue to do great things. And so that to me is the power of this community, and I think it's the power of something like this.
Thank you. Trustee Todd.
Thank you. It never ceases to amaze me how many little pockets and how many gems are in that Prezi. One thing that you did mention, and it really kind of, it struck a chord within me, when we talked about children in care, and the graphic you used, and we talk about it so often, the child is in the center, and all around are agencies of support. And it just, for me, it exemplified, when we make decisions, we always put the child in the center, and we basically say, how can we support each and every one of your child? And it really cemented it. So thank you, and I certainly think our population, children in care, are vulnerable. That's exactly where the emphasis had to be. I also like your comments now that where you talked about sometimes when a district is as large, we're 6th largest now, it's easy to get caught up in the hubris and the can'ts and the as you say, the rising cynicism. But the best way to stem that is to adopt a can-do attitude. And thank you for leading can-doers.
Trustee Walz.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. I'm thoroughly amazed with how much this district is doing for students. I had the good fortune of being able to be a judge at the Idea Summit, and I was blown away at the students' creativity, but their social justice, because they had to do their financial plan and put so much percent into a social cause, and that just, and they knew about the cause. So I was really, really amazed at that, and I think I'm amazed at how that summit was even pulled off with the amount of initiatives that this district is doing and taking on. But yeah, it was an amazing event. I loved the community partnerships, the community connections, because, you know, going right back to what you said about that student, you know, it takes a lot of people to look after a child, and they're in the center. So I just want to congratulate the people that were involved in the Idea Summit. Thank you.
Trustee Coburn.
I was exhausted watching your presentation, but all youth are vulnerable, and some youth are more vulnerable than others. So I would just like to say thank you to this district and to these people who work here for all of the care that you show our children in care. And in terms of your goal of increasing graduation rates, that's going to go a long way to help you reach that goal. So of the things that I've seen since I've been a trustee, that's probably one of my favorite things in terms of initiatives was that position, and the work that he's already done with that. It just speaks to how dedicated he is to that role. So thank you.
Trustee McVeigh.
Thank you. Aside from all of you sitting here tonight and finance meetings and budget updates, this is what I'm really going to miss. This is magic. There's so much incredible work that goes on in the school district that people just busy doing things and finding ways to inspire kids, to help them find their passion, to keep kids motivated, and it's incredible to see what goes on and to realize that every day there are so many people working hard to make it happen. And I am really, I love this kind of stuff and seeing it, and I'm going to miss that part of it very much. And it takes a great leader to keep people inspired through the challenges, for sure, and a great team behind that. So my congratulations to everybody. What a year. Incredible work. So much good things going on, and so much to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you. So trustees, can we get a motion that the Board of Education receives the report on the framework for enhanced student learning for information as presented? Trustee Wallace, second. Trustee Ross. Other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That brings us to the information items, Mr. Stewart.
So at this point, call in Assistant Superintendent Woody Bradford. I know Assistant Superintendent Mel Gill is going to join him through this, and I do want to say that in terms of the work on middle school hasn't stopped. We've obviously there's a financial piece to this that we are certainly continuing to work with the ministry on. But I know our community, we got them pretty excited, and got them excited about this unfolding, and kind of we're saying, well, what's next? And I want you to know that both of them have been very diligent in terms of their work with communities to say that we will get there. It may look a little bit different in each of the sites, and the timeline may look a little bit different. We'll continue to communicate and work with people, and they're here tonight to share where we're at now and what they'll be sharing with the community prior to the summer. So appreciate that, and I'll turn it over to Woody Bradford.
Thank you, Superintendent Stewart. So Assistant Superintendent Gill and myself are going to share with you just an update in terms of where we are with the middle schools and the 3 different communities that we've been working with. I've been responsible for the transition committee in the Poppy community, and Assistant Superintendent Gill has been working with Walnut Grove and Brookswood. All 3 communities have engaged in conversations with the middle school pillars being the foundational piece in terms of how we're making decisions through this process. And when we think through just the previous presentation we had about the framework for enhancing student learning, the middle school process is a leverage again for our framework for enhancing student learning, because the decisions we're making are built on the core values we have as a district. Within the integrity area that we're looking at is just making sure that we make decisions that support the transition to middle smoothly for our students from elementary and then into the high school years. Also looking at just making sure it's a safe and orderly place for kids to be successful, and in the community piece, making sure that we're creating spaces where each student is connected to other students and other adults in the building, and really ensuring there's that sense of community and sense of belonging within our middle schools. Within the excellence area, we want to ensure that we have a high level of instruction at the middle school level. So we're having conversations about what we're currently doing in our middle schools and how do we transition that into the communities that we're working with, and making sure the information is relevant to our students in the 6 to 8 grades. Again, talking about the redesigned curriculum, this is a great age group to have discussions around how we make learning practical for our students and how we apply different opportunities for them to really test those skills and strategies that they have in real life situations. And then, of course, just in terms of the courage we take to take on new opportunities for learning around explorations. What sort of opportunities can we create for our students to explore their learning and find their passion and really take their learning to a higher level? So it's an extremely exciting process to go through. And to be honest with you, I can share with all you, when I started with the Poppy community, I was extremely nervous in terms of what it was going to look like. Certainly, when you go down a road and you don't know what the end result is going to look like, you need to make sure you listen carefully to the community in terms of what they're asking for. So I just want to say, first of all, we've done it for the last year working together, and it's been a great experience, an incredible learning experience for myself. And it's really the work of our teachers, our students, our principals and vice principals, our support staff, our parents, just working collectively together. It's a committee that's involved 30 people from each of the different communities in the Poppy region, and there has been rich discussions every time we have collectively come together as a team. And right from the beginning, we talked about what is this process going to look like? What's the vision for our process? And Trustee Todd just talked about the framework for enhancing student learning, that at the heart of everything we do as students, and this process is following that journey, making sure that we're making decisions for our students, that we're creating opportunities, that we're building opportunities, that the transition is smooth for our students, and that we really embrace our communities. In each of those different areas in the Poppy region, we want to make sure we take the strengths of each of those communities and embed them into our middle school at the Poppy site. So since we last had this conversation, we've had 3 different meetings, and we've gone on the journey of continuing the discussion. On the January 17th meeting, we came back together and we debriefed some of the conversations we were having of transitioning to a K-5 system within the Poppy region. And as you recall, we talked about the Coghlan-Wicks combination of those 2 communities. So we debriefed what we were experiencing in each of those communities, what we were hearing from those communities, and just shared it out with the larger transition team itself. We also talked about the specific areas within the Poppy site of things that we could do, and we looked specifically at the Learning Commons area. And the Learning Commons area, the discussion started to really take to a new level of the Learning Commons being the heart of the Poppy 6 to 12 school, 6 to 8 being the middle and 9 to 12 being the secondary, and that's what the hub of the learning was going to be within the school. And we had rich discussions around that and said that that was something that we wanted to explore as a team. And then finally, as you remember, each of the different interest areas that the transition committee had around athletics, outdoor arts, we got back together as a group and discussed some of the different ideas that we could create within that within those different teams that we could transition into the 6 to 8 school. On the March 1st meeting, we came back together, and Sandra Avo and Stacey Bernier from our instructional services team came out, and they ran us through the design process to look at how could we convert the current Poppy site to a 6 to 8 and 9 to 12 school. And it was an exciting opportunity to go through that process, because we were actually embedding the redesign pedagogy right into our meeting together as a group. So we met and we discussed, and each of the teams went out and looked at the different regions within the site, looked at the different spaces, and we thought, how can we come up with creative ideas? I think our vision as a district, when you think of being innovative, it was live that night in terms of what we were discussing as a team to come up with. And then finally, at the June 6th meeting, you'll notice there was a bit of a delay between the March and the June meeting, because we were waiting on the decision around funding. As we went through this process, we knew that obviously with Secretary Treasurer Isley's report this evening, we knew that that was tied to some of the decisions we had to make. And how fast we were going to go in this process really one of the things we had to make sure is, did we have the financial backing to be able to do it? So we were kind of in the middle of the road waiting to see what was going to happen. And we wanted to know really kind of what pathway were we going to go on. And we knew that the financial piece was going to have ripples in terms of the impact it was going to have on our process. And we wanted to make sure that whatever decision we made was going to be sustainable. And the thing that it was going to impact, we thought the most was the timeline. We had originally started and said that 2020 and 21 was going to be the year that we were going to open a new middle school at Poppy. And we discussed that knowing that we had not received the $4.5 million through the capital funding. And we knew that we were going to put it back in the capital funding for next year to revisit. But at this time, we were wondering what was going to happen with the timeline. So really, with all the energy and enthusiasm we had as a group, we thought to ourselves, do we just kind of wait and sit and think about what are the next opportunities, or do we just continue to go forward? Do we continue to stretch our thinking to be innovative and inspiring and being unified as a group to try and make that destination happen in the 2020-21 school year? So I think just because the group itself had so many great ideas, we wanted to continue the momentum. We wanted to ensure that we were going down that pathway, and we were hopeful that the funding was going to happen as we went along. And we wanted to really continue to stick to the plan around what the middle school was going to look like. And if you remember, the middle school within Poppy had been set up through discussions as a team about what it was going to look like. And the one area of the building, you see the blue area of the building there, that was going to be the middle school. And these areas here were going to be the shared areas, the exploration areas. And then in the middle of the building, there was the Learning Commons, and that was the one in March that we spent a lot of time talking about the design of what that was going to look like. And upstairs would be where the high school, the 9 to 12 school would be. So we still wanted to go down that pathway. We just knew that the journey might take a little bit longer if it had to, because we wanted to make sure we did it right, but we still had the energy and enthusiasm to go forward. So really, going forward, and tonight with the reading with the Secretary Treasurer Isley's report that came out, we were really hopeful that we were going to get the $500,000 so we could start redesigning the space. And we wanted to look at two different pieces. We wanted to look at the structures, the physical structure and layout of Poppy, and what could we do with that $500,000. And then we also wanted to take a look at the educational side in terms of what are the strategies we need to start thinking of in our K-7 schools currently right now that we might be able to begin the thinking and wrapping our minds around what it was going to look like in our middle school. So some of the ideas we came up with for the structures in terms of what we could currently do, and I met with George Kozovic, the principal of Poppy, and we did a walk through the school, and we took a look at some of the things that we could do currently right now that we could accomplish. And one of the things that was really, really important for us was creating common spaces where kids could come together and collaborate. So we look at the existing building, and there's some things we can do right now that wouldn't be a dramatic cost that we could take care and have those collaborative areas. We want to update the athletic areas, specifically the gym right now. So again, Secretary Treasurer Isley talked about in his financial report the Poppy floor. So we're redoing the Poppy floor. We're going to put a mural in the gym. We're going to put technology in the gym. And again, a showcase that we're moving towards middle school. Even the risers we're putting in are going to be available. They're going to have 600 seats. So we're preparing for the middle school kids coming in. The foyer entrance, again, looking at an open concept, an open learning concept, so kids can come and have collaborative spaces to learn, and teachers can come and work with those kids. And then a classroom conversion on the upstairs of Poppy from a computer lab to a regular classroom to create space for our high school students. And then we talked about future projects. Still want to move forward with the Learning Commons space of what it's going to look like. And again, with more funding, we can start looking at what the potential is there. The partnership with the township over the possibility of a turf field at Poppy. And then the last one was a covered court area outside for some opportunities for still play and activity for the 9 to 12 or the 6 to 8 middle school for kids to go outside and still continue that exercise in an explorations format or a blocking system in the high school. Barry, jumping in. Thanks, Barry. You're the best. And then we talked about the other piece that right now we were exploring were what are the strategies that we can do on the educational side with our K-7 schools right now and also our high school, our 8-12 school right now. And we talked about discussing the possibility of looping students from grades 6 to 7, which is a current strategy within our middle schools. So what that might look like in our K-7 schools at Peterson and Fort Langley and Wicks and North Otter. So those schools looking at looping those students, increasing the exploration opportunities. So what could we do for the grade 6 and 7s or the grade 7s to give them some experiences? Are we doing things like busing the kids up to the high school for some opportunities to use some of those facilities? Are we creating mobile units that we can come in and use them at the elementary school? What can we do for our grade 8s to get them ready for that leadership opportunity? As you know, in our middle schools, we have web training for our grade 8 students, and do we start looking at some of that in terms of getting our teachers ready for that area? Looking at the athletics, offering opportunities for our PE teachers in our high schools to come down and offer those services to our grade 6 and 7 students and start building those skills that they'll need at the middle school and then into the high school. And you'll know that in the Poppy region right now, they already access a band teacher coming down into the elementary schools to support their music program. And then just working with each of the schools to ensure that we're creating community around the 6 to 8 and 9 to 12 model. So really a lot of facilitation between the elementary schools and high schools to build that capacity so that we're successful. And then finally, you'll remember that the other board motion that we had to be aware of and needed to pay attention to was the K-5 transition. So we wanted to make sure that we continued to have discussions about that, exploring the different learning opportunities within the Wicks school. So we had explored the Coghlan Wicks opportunity. So that was still something that we wanted to continue that dialogue. But we also knew there are other programs as well. And Superintendent Stewart talked about it, our framework for enhancing student learning. The outdoor program is Wicks, another place that we look at starting that program and growing that program, no pun intended. And then the development of a sports program for the grade 4s and 5s. As you know, when your 6 and 7s leave the school, what happens to athletics in the K-5 schools? So looking at developing those skills, leadership development for grade 4s and 5s, and looking at the examples right now that we have in some of our schools on the slope and in the LSS schools about what are they doing for success in the K-5 schools right now that we could start doing in the Poppy region. And I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Gill for his presentation on Walnut Grove and Brookswood.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Bradford. Really hard to say that, actually. The Brookswood and the Walnut Grove communities are actually in a much different place, especially if you look at the Brookswood community who's awaiting the Brookswood Fernridge development. Certainly, middle school is in the future for that community, but it's a little ways down in the future. And in addition, looking at the capital plan, again, that presentation was done by Secretary Treasurer Isley. Walnut Grove is going to be waiting a little while before that opportunity gets to be in place for that community. So our problems in each of those communities, how do we maintain the momentum that's been achieved through the participation in the consultation process? So we've been working really hard in our communities to maintain that and to really think about how we can introduce the pillars of middle school in the current K-7 and 8-12 format. And so what we've done in our community is we've come up with a transition team of administrators to start with, and it's certainly that's something that can grow, where we've got the one administrator from each of the secondary schools, one administrator from the elementary schools, and intentionally brought our leaders in our middle schools, Kevin Reeve and Sean Davids, our principals, to the table as well, because I think really embedding the concept of the pillars is really going to be important for our leaders, so that they can start to grow the concept of the middle school at each of our schools. So really trying to really figure out 3 questions, which is what is middle, especially in a K-7 and an 8-12, and how can we bridge the gap between the two? What does middle look like and feel like in each of our schools, and how can we bring the pillars of middle into each of our communities? So we've also in our communities been busy meeting with our communities. I think an eye-opener for me was the West Langley community when I had a presentation to the PAC in March, when I was going through the consultation process one more time with the community, because I was working with a number of kindergarten parents at the time who hadn't actually been involved in that process. So again, how do we keep that process alive for folks? And that's going to be an important part of what we need to do moving forward. So what have we been doing so far? I think one of the things that I think we've been doing in each of our communities is creating middle events. And I think one of the difficult parts about middle events is that they're one-time only events. Leadership folks that are coming in from the secondary schools and working side by side in our elementary schools when the opportunity provides themselves, and trying to bring students in grade 6 and 7 up to the secondary school. Each of our schools runs a fantastic school transition day for our grade 8s when they come into the school, and as well try to bring the kids up during the spring, in some cases trying to bring them in when there's no other students in the school, especially in the last weeks of school, just to introduce students to the school. As well, there's transition programs for at-risk students as well, helping to build that transition. And fine arts productions. Currently, the secondary schools each invite their elementary schools up to watch the production, get a flavor of the secondary school and what that can look like. The Brookswood community certainly has been traditionally working with their basketball programs and going into our family of schools and working with our young athletes and bringing them up and through, and working with Friday Night Hoops, and as well holding other club events at the school. Again, some other strategies, things that we've been working with the community and planning for next year. How can we improve our events? How can we have more events for kids so we can make the secondary school a place where our students in our family of schools are happy to be a part of our secondary school? And truthfully, how do we get our secondary schools into our secondary students into our elementary schools as well? I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Tough Wally. The plans are to have an elementary group participate, or at least have our elementary schools come to that event and participate in that event as well. How can we get our elementary schools up and working with our flex time in each of our secondary schools? I think it's an opportunity. We're looking at not every flex time, but certainly not every school all at one time, but bringing the elementary schools in and working with our secondary teachers during flex time. Club days at Walnut Grove is something that they are very proud of. On Halloween Day, they have all of their clubs opened up to all of their students, and the idea is to bring some of our students up, get them connected with the clubs, and actually have our secondary students run the clubs in the elementary schools as well. Again, Assistant Superintendent Bradford also talked about PE support time, looking at releasing our PE teachers, working with our elementary students, because there seems to be a need in especially in the Walnut Grove community right now. Looking at honors band in Walnut Grove, and our explorations, again, giving them opportunities to come up and witness what it is that our secondary students are able to do as far as their discoveries, and as well having some of our teachers go into the elementary schools. In the Brookswood family, a lot of the similar things around bringing them up for events. You got Terry Fox, band, sports days, and again, the explorations as an additional idea for them to come up to the secondary schools. Other structures, I think in our work as leaders and educators in our buildings, we've tried to create structures, and these structures have been in place for a number of years already, but those are structures that I think emulate the world of middle in each of our secondary schools. The Gator Pod in Walnut Grove, where you've got basically a group of 60 kids that are 60 kids working together with 2 teachers. Explorations, getting in a chance to look at all the applied skills and fine arts, and kind of dabble in each one of those. Humanities as another option as well for students. Again, really just trying to limit the number of connections, where students coming from an elementary school and seeing 1 or 2 teachers coming to a secondary school and actually being connected to 8 or 9 teachers, trying to bring that down to 5 or 6, something that's more manageable. The next steps, and they're similar on both sides, and things that we're looking to, oh sorry, I should really just touch on CapPack at Brookswood. Certainly another option for kids, again, trying to make sure that students are working together with a group of teachers who really get to know that group of students. So the other parts are just things that are in planning right now around structures that we think we can bring into play in the next year or two. Project-based learning. We're looking at our academic teachers working with our grade 6 and 7 teachers and looking at, because there's no reason why those teachers have to be present in the classroom working through a lot of the projects that they could create, but they could be working on them together. I think we've seen an example of some kind of project-based learning where we had the Walnut Grove student who presented to us and working with an RE Mountain student. Well, we were trying to take that kind of a model where we could actually work with that in our secondary and our elementary schools. Physical education, once again, looking to see if we can build on an investment around providing physical education teachers who could actually work with our elementary colleagues and work directly with our students. WEB, which is Where Every Student Belongs, is our leadership program for our middle schools. Difficult to do, and we've really tried to brainstorm that as an option for our grade 8s, trying to go through that leadership learning process and then trying to make connections with our grade 6, 7s. So I think the next step up is the LINK program, which is run in Abbotsford right now. And again, given the opportunity to have students working with grade 9 and 10 students actually working through the LINK program and going to the elementary schools. Again, outline the concept of teaming and looping already with Assistant Superintendent Bradford. The looping piece, again, working through it around the implications of looping, around the inability to run a 5-6 split. So what does that mean for a cost for us? And teacher advisory, certainly being able to run those within our schools at the elementary and the secondary level. And that concludes our report as far as our, the other thing I should mention is that myself, I've written letters and haven't actually sent them out yet, but they're going to go out later this week or early next week to the communities outlining where we are as far as the middle process is concerned. And Assistant Superintendent Bradford is doing the same for the Poppy community.
Good, thanks.
Questions?
Thank you, gentlemen. Trustee Deckman.
Thank you for the detailed update. This has been something that has been a topic of conversation for a number of years and has had many starts and stops. And it's nice to hear that despite, sort of getting that sort of social change you need, people are really excited, and then technical issues where you couldn't get something implemented the way it hoped or whatever, you persevered through those and created these incredible learning opportunities to bring the best of the programming in. And having this update's been nice, because one of the concerns we had was how are you going to move this along? Would it be applied equally, and really what is equal and what's equitable? And so I'm really excited about the benefits from what you have structurally to work with, how you've implemented it to work with each community. And I really appreciate hearing about that and getting a chance to have that out in the forum, because that's really what makes the work that you've done so incredible. Really opening up those opportunities for every community and every district. I can't wait to see what's next. So thanks so much for taking the time to go through it and show how you worked around those things.
Trustee Todd.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the update. I think the important thing is that we are attempting to be responsive to our local communities as we go, and I know Superintendent Stewart talked about the concept of going as quick as you can or as fast as you can, but as slow as you may need to. In this case, certainly around the whole middle schools conversation, I think we boldly went and we got people very excited about the concept, and certainly through the consultation process, we heard loud and clear in the communities that said, well, okay, if we can't have the building, then can we kind of have middle school light may not be the right term, but certainly how can we change the structures and what we're doing. So I'm very encouraged to see how you're innovatively attempting to do that. You're looking at the things, how we can kind of change things and embed some of the middle school practices in our current K-7, 8-12 model. We're going forward, and I think that's important, and yeah, I think the appetite out there is very much for it. It's not soon enough, and let's hope that we get some capital monies. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to thank you for your efforts, and especially given the lack of sort of ministry capital support to sort of build something and deal with the physical structure in the way that we want to. And, you know, our commitment to ourselves of, you know, we're going to do this right or we're not going to do it. And I think it's impressive to see the way you found to keep us moving forward on this towards the destination. We'll get there. How fast will probably depend on whether we're successful with the province contributing some capital, but we'll get there. And yeah, it requires a lot of imagination and innovation and people working together and goodwill to find a way, but you're finding a way, and thank you. Really appreciate your efforts on this. Mr. Stewart, that brings us to the Truth and Reconciliation update.
I'll just mention to trustees that the letters that will go out to the committee, I'll put in a trustee memo, so you'll get a copy of those once those are ready to go. In terms of our annual Truth and Reconciliation update, I'll be calling on District Principal of Aboriginal Programming, Mike Morgan, and this is certainly something we could have put on the framework conversation we just did, but I knew Mike was going to be speaking to this, so thought let him go ahead in terms of the presentation there. We have, I never take for granted the great relations we have with our Aboriginal community, and that's a tribute to Mike and his staff and the work that he continues to do there. And we continue to make progress, and I'm very fortunate, as many of you have been, to take part in this process also, and a chance to hear an update from him this evening. So turn over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much. First off, if I might say, Haitsepka CM to those people who have put so much time into this work and are now moving on to different parts of their lives. It's extra special to do this knowing that all the partner groups are a part of this and started a part of this 3 years ago. So Haitsepka CM. My favorite part is that this is annual. We're in year 3 of our process of reconciliation. And there is Chairperson Rob McFarlane's words. Langley School District recognizes that while the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is now finished, our work has just begun. We have a rare second chance to seize a lost opportunity for reconciliation. I'm incredibly proud to say that while Justice Murray Sinclair says it took us 150 years to get into this mess, and it will likely take us 150 years to get out of it. The first 3 years for us have been an incredible start. I don't have enough time or slides to show all of the work that is happening in the district. This is an example of one of the things happening in our schools, and to give everyone the quick update the quick version of events, former trustee and now cultural presenter Cecilia Ricci, along with Josette Dandurand and Luke Dandurand, went to watch the release of the report itself, came back, and this board took the courageous action to say we are committing to this, and then we would like to see this commitment displayed in all of our schools. But of course, the work of establishing respectful and trusting partnerships between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people has been taking place for the last 30 years in our school district, with cultural presenters, with the Aboriginal program, with teachers at Langley Fine Arts such as Penny Carnwright, who've been doing this work for a long, long time. So to start with the truth part of it, this is Brad Marsden. He speaks all around the world about the history of residential schools and colonization, and he came to speak with our board, our school board office staff. Powerful, powerful presentation. And just to hear what our school board office staff had said about appreciation of being able to join in this journey, and we will be continuing to provide them with opportunities to learn the same things that their colleagues out in the schools are learning. It's hard not to have favorite pictures when you see these. Your commitment to reconciliation is being acknowledged in the schools. This is from James Hill Elementary. Last month they raised their plaque. It took them 3 years of solid planning, and the day it was well worth it. These are 2 James Hill students dancing in front of survivors of Indian residential school, who of course were not allowed to celebrate or even practice their culture. And on the left-hand side, you will see one of the survivors who was honored. She's a retired teacher. And for me, the best part of the day, maybe the month, as she left, she said, "That was a good thing. I left a lot of bad things in there. Thank you very much." So if we are doing nothing else, in our district, we are honoring those who survived residential school, helping them as they progress, and honoring those who didn't survive. And another example is Gordon Greenwood. They were the first school to put up their plaque. They now have an annual event commemorating that day. It's a full school-wide day where they have recognition of their commitment, a school-wide assembly, etc. You've shown national leadership in Orange Shirt Day. Every single one of our schools participates in Orange Shirt Day in a significant way. Again, it would be impossible to show all of the things that happen on that day. The Project of Heart, another example of this, Itzebka Calvin and Richard Bullpitt, just one of the latest schools to take on this project of active reconciliation, a school-wide event where former trustee Cecilia came in, spoke to everybody, and then the work that you'll eventually see the work that comes out of it, incredibly powerful for all of our students. Which leads us to, there are many people who don't believe in truth and reconciliation. There are people on the Indigenous side of the issue who do not believe in it, and there are people, non-Aboriginal people, who do not believe in it. And of course, as a district, we have committed to say that we believe in this process, and we believe that teaching students to talk with respect about and to one another is really important for us. So I want to highlight the actual reconciliation, the actions that our students are taking to make things better. This is Lorelei Williams. She started the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's March as a 17-year-old. She's now in her mid-20s. She is speaking to Walnut Grove students who, at the BCTF, through 2 of their teachers at Walnut Grove, Bronwyn Kelly and Steph Brasnett, were chosen to pilot this resource commissioned by the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Committee. Lorelei, it's nice when you hear the district's own vision coming out of other people's words, and the words she used towards those students and teachers were courage and excellence, and then later integrity. And for me, having her give feedback to those students about the work that they're doing shows that the work that the board has asked to happen is happening. Other small, sorry, I shouldn't say small, other examples. Shannon's Dream. We have schools, James Kennedy Elementary took part in Shannon's Dream, making sure that they're advocating for fair funding for First Nations students across Canada. This here is West Langley Elementary, equal health care for all children through, again, the First Nations Care Society. And of course, this is Catesy First Nation, where students from Langley Fine Arts, Walnut Grove, Langley Fundamental Middle Secondary, and any other schools who would have been called upon went to help sandbag. The students there learned an important lesson. You see on the left 2 of our Aboriginal support workers, and speaking, standing closest to us is Deanna Miller, a member of Catesy First Nation and an Aboriginal support worker in our district, and her daughter. She spoke to the group afterwards, thanking them, and explaining a little bit about why the necessity of the sandbagging on a regular basis. That our communities at one time didn't share trusting and respectful relationships, and they've been put outside of the, they've been placed outside of the diking that protects the rest of our community. It was a very powerful moment for her to be able to speak to that group of students who have also offered to go back and remove the sandbags. And the picture 1,000 words cliche. This is Principal Jeremy Linden sitting down with Chief Marilyn Gabriel at Kwantlen First Nation talking about what had to happen in their gym. And Principal Jeremy Linden of ACSS went to all 4 First Nations like this, sat down every step of the way and had these meetings and these discussions about how do we do this right. And if any of you have had the chance to see the work that happened in ACSS as a result, you'll know that reconciliation is happening. And finally, this example of Langley Fine Arts 3 years ago started a department head of Aboriginal Worldviews and Perspectives, and the rest of our middle schools and secondary schools took that on the next year, again, entirely out of their own budget, carving space out of their own budget to do this, taking real leadership. One of those things that came out of this was the students at RE Mountain Secondary School wrote letters to Superintendent Stewart, myself, and Don Tomlinson. And I'm proud to work in a district where the superintendent of schools will go out to sit in a class and respond to letters asking for why they think this course should be taught right across the board in all schools. That's the work of the department heads and the principals at each of the schools doing the work of active reconciliation. So I would like to say that everything that we do is as rosy as this. It's not. We have a long slog ahead of us. I'm not good at math, but about 147 years. We have things that need to change quickly. The best thing that I can say is that when I hear our students speaking about each other and to each other in incredibly respectful ways, trying to resolve some of the most difficult problems that our province has to solve, I'm incredibly encouraged. So I want to thank the board for your leadership in this, your commitment in it, and especially for putting up those darn plaques, because that was a real process. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Trustee Coburn.
Thank you. So we mentioned slog and lots of work, and I won't ask you what keeps you up at night. I'll save that for Trustee. Of all the things that we've done, from there, where do we go as a board, and what would be the primary focus for the incoming board?
Thank you. I think you're doing the work of consulting with our community. You're moving forward in partnership with our community. Rather than doing we're doing in consultation with. And that very important phrase, nothing about us without us, you're taking that to heart. You're asking every step of the way. So I think it would be to continue to do that.
Trustee Wallace.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your continued work. Thank you, Cecilia Ricci, for your continued work within our schools. We're so fortunate to have you. I have been so moved by so many of those, well, every one of the assemblies that I have attended. I'm amazed at the work that our Aboriginal leaders put in, and I know how hard it is for them, because some of them are going through so much, and they're always there for the students, right? And just the respect the respect that has come out of those reconciliation assemblies, and just how the kids are so attentive to what's going on. And I just want to just commend you, Mike, as a leader, and Donna and the Aboriginal support workers. Just thank you so much.
Thanks,
Trustee Todd.
Thank you. Thank you to your Aboriginal care workers. Thank you for the people in the schools doing this incredible work. Like all else, I have great faith and hope that the students will lead us, and they've changed this narrative. And yes, I know it's 3 years and we have 147 to go, but like many things, I think students get this, and they understand the injustices, and they understand, and they show great empathy and respect. And once again, it's all about the kids.
Trustee Ross.
You know, I've learned so much over the years, but I've learned how to love from your community. And I can't say how much they've modeled it. Every time I hang out with Marilyn Gabriel, Chief Marilyn Gabriel, it's just a beautiful experience. And you know, I enjoy every communication, every touch that I have with your community. So you've taught me an awful lot. So I just want to say thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Actually, I'd like to say that that feeling that you have is what it's what our kids get every day when they're with the Aboriginal support workers. That's I can't say that enough. Getting to walk in those spaces with them, in those classes, and watching the kids come out like this, yeah. So that feeling is what's going on in the schools. Thank you.
Trustee McVeigh.
When I think about change over the years, I think this is probably one of the biggest, most profound changes that I've seen in this school district with regard to the First Nations, and the change in thinking, the change in bias, the change in people's understanding. And without a doubt, there's a tremendous amount of work still to be done. But I think when I think about where we started, and where we are today, it's really rather incredible. It's extremely heartwarming, and I think it's tremendously hopeful for where we're going. The understanding and the growing and deepening understanding within our community is really impactful, and I think the kids are, as we've said, they're modeling it, they're understanding it, they're getting it, and I think the big people are starting to come around, and lots of work to do for sure, but your leadership has been enormously helpful in this journey, and I really congratulate you and your team, because it's the people out in the schools as well who are really patiently and lovingly showing the way, and it's remarkable to see the change over the years. So thank you for the work, and to the people around you.
Thank you. I'll make sure they know that.
I just want to pass on my thanks too. It really is. Okay, it really is inspiring to see sort of how the relationship has developed with us, mainly Kwantlen, but obviously Keetsie as well, over the years, and sort of the trust that's built and the conversation that seems to be building and ongoing, and I appreciate the education I've received from the process, and yeah, just working with the people of that nation and how they handle things and how they handle adversity. And you go to the student awards and the stories and how they've overcome and how they've dealt with, you know, some amazing things, and it really is a lesson learned. And you know, I personally have benefited by it, and I think we're blessed because the First Nations we do work with really are a model. Like there's a tendency to think all First Nations are similar, and obviously, you know, as you learn more about this, they vary tremendously, and we've been blessed to work with some really fantastic people, and I think that's why, you know, part of the reason why we've been able to achieve so much. And you're right, there's a long way to go, but it's a really good start, and you've been a big part of that, and I appreciate it, and you're the whole team behind it, and lots more to come. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Trustee Dyckman.
I sort of reflect back over the years that I've been on the board and the steps that we've taken, and how incredible it's been to watch the evolution of the programming and the people in the schools and receive these updates. But very rarely do we get sort of like a micro view. And you know, I have an older teenage son, and his day at that age span ranges from good to fine to sort of an inaudible grunt. And that's sort of the only thing. How was your day? And he came home the other day, and he very rarely, he's like the antithesis of my daughter. He's very rarely excited about anything. And he says, Mom, you have to hear about this. We had a presentation in our school, and he went through all of the stories and the way that the injustices that he viewed through the stories, and ways that our community could change, and the great initiatives going on in the district. And that was from people who present in our schools coming in, and the amazing work that's done every day with the students. And he talked for about 75 minutes. And it was like, there was no breath. I would try to sort of come in and say, and did you know? No, it was a 75-minute monologue, which I loved, by my son on this, and the passion that he had from it. So I love watching these, but to see this, and then to be reflecting on just a couple of days ago of the effect on one person, I can only imagine how many of those one people there are that are reached in a year or a day and a month in our district. And so it's just great to hear this update, but also we're very fortunate to have the people in our department that we do. So thank you very much, and I can't wait till the next update.
Thank you. I'll let them know.
Thanks, Zach. Hey, trustees, could we get a motion that the Board of Education receives the superintendent's information item reports as presented? Moved by Trustee Wallace, seconded Trustee Coburn. Comments or questions on any of these? All those in favor? Any opposed? So at the beginning of this meeting, we neglected to add new business item, which we were given a heads up on earlier. So there's provision for what's called unanimous consent, where we can agree to do something like add this item to the agenda, and we've agreed by unanimous consent unless one of you disagree, and in which case we'll do it formally. So do we have anybody disagreeing with adding this item? Great. That's adopted by unanimous consent. Trustee Dyckman.
Thank you. And I really do appreciate my fellow trustees allowing this item to be added this way. Having Mac here was distracting, and I missed asking for it to be added during the agenda. So I do appreciate you supporting that. So I would like to move a motion that be it resolved that the Langley Board of Education form an ad hoc committee to review communication with partner groups and examine ways in which communication can be improved. This committee should be comprised of no less than 3 trustees, 2 representatives of each of the 5 partner groups, superintendent, secretary, treasurer, designates, and the communication officer, director. Other members may be added after a work plan is approved by the board. The terms of reference and work plan should be completed for approval at the September 2018 regular meeting of the board. I would like to move this and speak to it first, if somebody would second it.
Seconded by Trustee Todd.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Trustee Dyckman.
As per the school district mission, vision, and value statement, the board's communication plan and the strategic plan communication with partner groups is identified as a priority of the board. It is important for the board to reflect and consult with partners from time to time on what's working and what could be improved as a component of good governance and accountability. The intent of this ad hoc committee would be to provide a space for partner groups to be part of both consultation and development of widely viewed protocols, for lack of a better word, and ways in which the district could ensure that communication is flowing. This, though, would not be a venue for specific issues to be discussed, but to review and improve communication protocols where needed, examine ways which processes could be improved and developed. The district has a policy, Policy 4000, related to communication with the public, but does not have a specific one related to partner groups. This motion is not intended to indicate that a policy should specifically be developed, but to examine what would be best to reflect and perhaps improve communication and to ensure consistency when there's changes of boards. So the relevant documents would be our school district communication plan in reference with Policy 4000. So I ask for your support because I believe it's important for us to reflect and communicate broadly and move along and make sure that we're following our mission, vision, value statement.
Thank you. Any other speakers to this motion? Trustee Ross?
Thank you, and I just want to clarify, so we have a policy committee, we have what have you. Is this similar to the policy committee? Can you just explain the difference for the staff?
So this would be an ad hoc committee. It would be struck with a specific terms of reference, a specific work plan which we would approve. From that, there would be a recommendation on the number of meetings it would take, likely, a full meeting, and then come back, look at it, go back, report back, and re-examine. And then, but it would be up to, the board to look at how many meetings and whether or not there would be more after that. But the intent would be a committee that was ad hoc, so that there were terms of reference in the work plan. So we all have the same expectation.
Okay. Any other speakers to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And now before we move on to trustee comments, Gerp, we missed acknowledging you at the beginning, or at least you missed us acknowledging you. So I want to thank you for your time. It's being your last meeting here. Appreciate you being here and your work on behalf of your union, your members, students in the school district. Well, that would be a nice surprise. I also neglected to acknowledge our two former trustees here, Cecilia Riki and Candy Ashdown. Cecilia has a wonderful way of just hiding behind people every time she shows up, and then somebody snitches on you and I find out you're here. So thank you both for coming and joining us tonight. And that will bring us to trustee comments, and we'll start with trustee Coburn tonight.
It's the last meeting of the year, so I'm going to say some things. First, I'd like to thank our partner groups and all the people who've served, and thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll see some of you again in different capacities. Appreciate what you do. And also I'd like to say happy birthday, David Todd. Sing it. But the rest of my comments I'm going to direct to Trustee McVeigh because she took me by surprise. So, so watching you even tonight, after you said you're not going to run again, you're still wholeheartedly invested in what you're doing at this table. You're still attentive, you're still asking questions, and it speaks to how much you love the work that you do, and even to the end, you're going to be in it, which is really nice to see. Your words are true to who you are, cautious and fair, balanced and honest. And tonight with your words, you so beautifully and eloquently define what it means to do this work. Having worked alongside you now for the better part of 3 years, I can attest that your actions and your decisions are in line with the words that you spoke earlier this evening. But of all of the wise words that you shared, what stands out the most to me are the words you spoke to would-be potential trustee candidates. It is always important to understand that you are not alone and that you are here to serve all students. But especially given what this district has seen over the past year, these words are even more pressing. We are here to serve children and families, all children and all families. It is right and it is fair. And so tonight I will end by paraphrasing the words of a child that Zoja shared with us tonight. When it appeared to this child that someone was receiving special treatment, the child said that once they walked in someone else's shoes, they understood. They said, "It is fair. They are getting what they need, and I am getting what I need." Trustee McVeigh, you govern with fairness, making sure everyone gets what they need. It has been my privilege to serve alongside you. I have learned so much from you and have benefited so often from your kindness. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Ross.
Well, thank you, everyone, and I would like to have a few words with regards to Trustee McVeigh as well. And a class act. And whoever sits in that chair is going to have a tough place to fill, that's for sure. But, you know, we've been spending years together on the foundation, and your work in the foundation, you know, you really, you know, took the foundation and made it what it is today in many ways. And so I'm so proud of what you've achieved in that role, and we've certainly missed you already, but, you know, I'm going to miss you more so. So I was thinking about what sort of a gift I could give you, right? And you know, gifts are kind of like goofy and stuff like that. So I thought what I'd do is I would actually give you a playlist. And so I've got 21 songs here, and I'm just going to give you a few of them. But you know, a couple of them that you might be interested. I won't press on them this time. Okay. Thank you. I'm a slow learner. All right. Go Your Own Way. Fleetwood Mac, Good Times, Sam Cooke, Can't Stop the Feeling, Justin Timberlake. Greater Is Coming. Happy. I really like that song, Happy. I just thought that was you for sure. You know, Here Comes the Sun from the Beatles, and All You Need Is Love. Let It Be, The Long and Winding Road, and Ride Like the Wind, Christopher Cross. And I've got a few others down here, but I'll sort of end off with that right now. But You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, Walkman Turnover Drive. So when you're going home tonight, you can listen to these songs. So I think I emailed it to you, and if anyone else wants a copy of it, I'd be happy to email you a copy of Allison McVeigh Retirement Playlist. So thank you, Allison. I'm going to miss you. I miss you already. And really, I have many colleagues, but it's wonderful to call you a friend. And I'm going to miss you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Ross, and especially for not singing those songs. But Trustee Wallace could, because she could sing.
Just want to thank our partner groups for your dedication and your work with children. I don't think people know as what you do behind the scenes. I don't even know, but I know it's a lot of work and the things that you have to deal with. And I am so grateful that you are there for our children, so thank you very much. As for children, there's something that Chief Marilyn Gabriel always says. She says at a lot of assemblies, reconciliation assemblies, and she says that children are our medicine. And I love every time she says that, because our children, they teach us so much. They teach us about resiliency. They teach us about truth. They teach us about being real. They teach us, you know, about forgiveness. And they're so, you know, their love is so unconditional. And all they want is to be loved. Every single child that comes into our schools just wants to be loved and accepted for who they are. And I just want to commend our board of trustees for being so gracious, so strong in their convictions of standing for every single child that comes through the doors. And I want to thank our, you know, administration team, our leadership team, our teachers, our Aboriginal support workers, our special needs teachers, our coaches, our musical teacher, you know, musical theater teachers, our focus program. I could go on, our AVID program. You could go on and on and on. I am just so thrilled. It's not even a good word, thrilled, but I'm just, my heart is so full with how much this district cares for students. So I just want to thank the district for that, and I am going to end off in wishing Allison all the best and thanking her for what she has taught me on this board. Thank you.
Trustee Todd.
So, once again, I want to thank you, our partner groups over here. Hours. It's not minutes. It's not seconds. It's hours that you put in because you have a zest and a love for public education. And all of you are there for the right reasons. So I appreciate that. To those of you who won't be back next year, I offer my thanks. I appreciate what each and every one of you has offered to us. Thank you in a very appreciative way. Public education is there for the greater good. And tonight you see, or you saw, what that means, public education. Beside me, you have a person who's dedicated, on last count, 19 years. I'm not sure of the election cycle on that, but Alison McVeigh did so with elegance, grace, and sophistication. What I learned from her was a sense of fairness and careness. She would ask difficult questions that needed to be answered, but all the way through, she once again just had the love for children and a careness and a kindness. It was much appreciated. I only had the pleasure of working with her for one term, but I learned a lot from her. I learned a lot about what being a school trustee was all about. She comes prepared, she knows her stuff, she has can do and knowledge all in one hand. So it's an amazing, so we are losing somebody who I'll miss. And I'm glad to say I've done 2 grads and it's my birthday and I look forward to a restful summer. Thank you.
Trustee McVeigh.
Oh my goodness. I was not expecting any of this. Thank you. You keep me humble very much, all of you. I'll be back in September, so we'll get to see each other again. I look forward to that. I did want to take this opportunity to thank our partner groups for the amazing amount of time that you spend doing the work that you do to do from your heart what's best for kids and to advocate for your colleagues, and that's admirable and it's appreciated and it's important. I hope you all take time to enjoy the summer and rest and recharge, and to those that won't be back, thank you for your service, and I wish you all the very best as well in whatever journey or path your journey takes you. To our senior leadership team, what a year. Holy cow, man. You guys have just gone above and beyond, and talk about can do, and talk about inspiring, talk about working to unify, courage, excellence, all the things that we talk about, that we value, that we try to model for our community. It's wrapped up in this leadership team, and we are all better for it. The strengths that you bring, the commitment that you make, it shows in all the presentations that we had tonight, which is just such a small sampling of the work that's gone on throughout the year. The finance team, my goodness, the care and consideration that you take to make sure that we can do the things that matter and that make a difference for kids just really does not go unnoticed. So I wish you all the very best for the summer. I know you're going to be working away, but I hope you all take time to rest and recharge as well, because you truly deserve it and your families miss you. I know they do. So take time for them and for yourselves. And my colleagues at the table, it's been a great year. We've done lots of really good work. We've crossed a lot of things off the list, and we've continued to learn and grow together, and that's been really good. So have a wonderful summer yourselves. It's going to be a busy fall, and I look forward to being back here one more time and get to have some more fun. Thank you.
Trustee Degman.
So a lot of what I wanted to say has been said. I think we sort of merged into one thought with the amount of time we spent together this year. It's been a year. Wow. For everybody, for our partners, I can't even imagine the pace and the hours. And I mean, I remember when I sat in Suzanne's seat, what it was like. So I fully appreciate and want to thank you for the dedication, the endless hours you put in, the exceptional advocacy you make, and I'm going to miss seeing those of you who aren't going to be at the table at our next meeting, but I feel fortunate to have gotten an opportunity to get to know each of you, and hope that we still continue to cross paths in whatever roles you'll be playing. I'd like to welcome you and look forward to seeing you sitting at the table in September. But most importantly, I hope that you have some much needed downtime, no matter how long it is over the summer. I know it's not as long as the full time that our students are out, but whatever time you have with your family, I hope you take that to rest and relax and then enjoy a much needed break. Our leadership team, all of you, thank you for going above and beyond another year with incredible amount of change. I mean, this has been a year of change and having to reposition and reorganize. And to my fellow trustees, we have 3 trustees who are incredible, who we know have said that they're not rerunning, and we still have one more meeting. To all of you, it's really been this school year a privilege to sit at the table with each and every one of you. We've grown, we've learned new things, we've had to adjust. We certainly haven't always agreed, but going back to when I first ran a number of years ago and the divisiveness in the district then, I certainly hope we don't ever go back to that type of divisiveness again as we head into an election season. It's been a privilege to work with people who are able to disagree on issues, but work together for proper governance and the greater good. And we've all brought different things to the table, and it's been a growing experience for myself. And this school year has been another growing experience, and so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to sit at a table, disagree, agree, work together, find solutions for the right reasons. And as we head into the school year in the summer, don't usually like to sit at this table and get political. I hope that those that are considering running realize their job, realize their role, realize what good governance is, and look to the people who aren't running and see them as role models of people that understand the concept of good governance. So enjoy your summer, get some much needed rest, enjoy your time with your family, and we will return to silly season in September.
And I'm going to hold my comments till September, which will be my last of these regular meetings, other than to wish everybody a good summer and get some rest, whatever it is, and recharge, because it all starts again soon enough. And so that brings us to question period. Question period is provided at board meetings for the public to ask questions of clarification. The board welcomes questions from the public and wants to ensure that those wishing to ask questions can do so. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at board meetings that is in keeping with the goal of respectful and focused meetings. The questions need to be directed at the chair, myself, and not to staff, need to be related directly to a topic on the agenda, need to be succinct, focused, and not a statement. In other words, actually be a question. May not be asked that are related to personnel or directed to an individual trustee, and may not be asked that are related to contractual negotiations. So do we have a... Please introduce yourself, even though we know very well who you are.
Hello, I'm Marnie Wilson, president of CUPE 1260. I want to thank the board for the motion to form an ad hoc committee. I think that's great. I would just like some clarification on the September date to report back. I believe you said September 2018. And as one of the 5 partner groups, I am hoping that CUPE 1260 will have input into that report. But our members are laid off for summer, so can you please clarify the plan, what the plan is, and is it possible to extend the deadline for reporting back?
So the plan would be to meet in September, so not while everybody's away, and exactly what that will look like is yet to be developed, but that would be sorted out and brought forward publicly.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Okay. Any other questions this evening? Going once? Yes. And please remember to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Curtis Green. I'm a parent in the Langley School District. My questions relate to the delegations, if that's all right. There were a couple of delegations this evening that were written delegations. Did the people that submitted those delegations, would they normally have an opportunity to speak them verbally, or?
Delegations can be approved in various formats.
Okay.
The board has already received several delegations on that topic, on the SOGI topic.
Okay.
So the decision was made that all future delegations, regardless of which side of that debate they're on, will be in writing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I guess it wouldn't be normal for them to be read at the meeting, would they?
No, but they're on the package and available publicly as part of the agenda.
I thought there might be a link on the agenda, but I couldn't activate it, so I don't know if that's...
They should be attached there.
Okay.
If you can't get that to work, then
well, it's
perhaps...
on my phone, so I'll check on my computer when I get home.
Yes, it should be there, and if it's not, let Mr. Hoff know, and he'll correct it, because it certainly should come up. In our copies, they came up correctly.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that again. And obviously, my next question was whether we could get a copy of that, but obviously we can print it off there.
Yeah.
And does the board have any obligation to respond to those delegations, or is that just generally for the information of the board?
There is not an obligation to respond. In some cases, there'll be a response, in some they won't. Those delegations were focused on legal matters. Legal matters are dealt with by the board in in-camera meetings for obvious reasons.
Okay.
So that's how they'd be addressed.
That's fair enough.
Okay, you got one more.
Okay. I actually had 3 more, so
I will hang around afterwards if you want to talk some more.
Okay. So I guess they all kind of relate to the same thing. There's, and again, it goes back to a question specifically about SOGI. There's 2 sets of concerns on this issue, obviously. And I've approached it from a moderate point of view to get some information about it and try and make some decisions on it. And it seems from where I'm standing that one set of concerns is getting a fair bit of support, and the other set of concerns looks to be getting more of a beating than some support. And I'm wondering if the board has any plans to, obviously you have a constituency that includes both sets of concerns, and I think you would ignore one or the other at your peril. That's not a very good way to put it, but I think you probably would feel some obligation to address both sets of concerns, and wondering if you have a method to do that, or if you have any plans for...
There's nothing on the board agenda or plan to make any changes in that regard. So it's not on the plan, and unless a trustee brings forward something and it gets seconded and voted on and supported, then that's what it takes for anything to happen and change. So to answer your question, it's not on the plan at this point in time. And so I will be hanging around afterwards and be happy to talk to you about other areas.
I think the other ones might relate more to the Ministry of Education than a local board anyways, but I will speak to you about it if you have a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, trustees, we need a motion to adjourn. Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Ross. All those in favor? Thank you.